Test 1 2 test. Test 1 2 test. All right. Holy shit, my computer does not like this. Okay, guys, we are in a insomnia stream. As it is an insomnia stream, I will be going lights off today and just doing some chill streaming. Rare late night stream. I know, it's been too long. My sleep schedule has been too good. I need to fuck it up with all of you. Anyway, so I wanted to talk about, by the way, I also wanted to listen to this Dana White stuff, but I wanted to cover some more ContraPoints controversies, specifically this Bad Faith podcast, with Brianna Joy Gray. There's some other things that we need to cover too, but specifically this. And while we're doing this, we're going to also be doing a little bit of Slay the Spire. I got to get my ascension level up, right? So let's start off with, man, what were we watching before? ContraPoints interview with that fucking, like, I don't even know what the fucking guy's name is. Yeah, this 3-hour long interview that she did. We'll watch a little bit of this and then see.
The West.
ContraPoints. Also, how is the volume for everyone?
A transgender underdog who was like they related to, and then I got too big, and they don't relate to me anymore, and they resent me for getting too big, and it's like,
yeah,
I think that then like caused like a kind of extreme moral, extremely like stringent moral purity that was expected of me, and that I was not able to deliver on.
Okay, so we'll shut that off. We'll pause that. Go like this. We got some Slay the Spire action going on here. So this is what I'm doing. We got to set the groundwork for Slay the Spire too. Slightly low, but definitely audible. Okay, if it's slightly low, I can increase the audio quality. There we go. That should make it better. So we're going to do standard. We're going to do, which character should I do? So I have all of these guys now at Ascension level 4. Start each run with 1 less potion slot. Except for this guy, which I'm not a huge fan of these ones. I don't know. Let's do random. As long as I don't get Regent. Okay, the Defect. I've been playing a lot of Defect. Gain 1 potion slot and procure 2 random potions. Gain Greed, 333 gold. What's better? You know what? Let's get the potion slot in there. I think that's fine.
The degree to which the audience can turn on the creator also is fanatical, because it was their like favorite thing. It was that subcultural identity before, and now that they feel in some way betrayed, it's like they just kind of unload all of that kind of parasocial fanaticism into this new outlet of, oh, I actually hate that person. I've hated their stuff the whole time.
And that's not just a leftist thing. Like, I do think that on the right,
I think it's just a social media
everyone
thing.
kind of hates each other, right, too, right? Like, but they're somehow able to, like, I think maybe it's because they believe in loyalty on some level. They when it counts, like, they come together to support daddy, whereas the left doesn't do this. Not really.
I see.
So I don't know. It's not that there's no leftists online, but I also think that, like, there is a struggle to convey leftist ideas to, like, less radicalized people. So I mean, I think that's what Joe Rogan's real utility is to the right.
To talk to normal people.
Is that he seems like a normal guy.
Yeah.
Right, or at least there was a time when he seemed like a normal guy. He is now kind of a little bit.
He's moved.
But
he's also backed off of the Trump stuff too.
Yeah. No, that's true. But I think
big audience has to include normal people who are not like political ideologues.
And it's tough to do that on the left, because if you have a guest who has said, XYZ problematic thing, there'll be a bunch of leftists online screaming at you for platforming fascists or whatever, right? So the temptation is to maintain the boundaries of the cloister. I don't know. It's hard to say like what the solution to that is. I mean, like you've had the Democratic politicians like Gavin Newsom like do this, where he's like, I'll talk to anyone. Like, yeah, I'll talk to Ben Shapiro. Yeah, I'll talk to But people don't like that on the left. They don't like it.
Yeah.
Or like I know trans people in particular.
This is. I don't know, man. If ContraPoints is going to be this fucking boring, then we're going to have to find some other subject matter for this live stream. Because when you're talking about like, people don't like it when Gavin Newsom talks to Ben Shapiro. Well, the point is not that he's talking to Ben Shapiro. The point is that he's fucking agreeing with a lot of the stuff that he's saying. Like, it's one thing if you're platforming someone who has atrocious ideas and you're subtly like shoehorning in these ideas to your audience. Like, I don't know, let's say that you platform Nick Fuentes, like what Destiny did, and Nick Fuentes makes himself seem palatable towards Destiny's audience, and he gains a following as a result of going on to Destiny's stream and being interviewed and being propped up as a good guy. That's one thing. You're platforming someone and they are increasing their audience, increasing the amount of harm they can do. That's one reason why people wouldn't like that. The other reason why people wouldn't like it is if you're fucking like agreeing with something horrible that the shitty right-winger that you're talking to says. Like, when Gavin Newsom talks to Ben Shapiro, he's not fucking platforming Ben Shapiro. Ben Shapiro has reached the pinnacle of his fame. Like, he cannot get any more famous, and actually he's getting worse. People are casting him off into irrelevancy. Like, Ben Shapiro is not going to get more famous by getting platformed by Gavin Newsom. The issue that people had when Gavin Newsom talked with Ben Shapiro is that he agreed with him. He agreed with him on the fact that like Israel isn't really committing a genocide. He agreed with him on some of the ICE stuff. He agreed with him on some of the trans stuff. That's why people are criticizing him. Like, people like ContraPoints want to make all of this like leftist politics. They want to make it seem like it's some kind of it's this unbeatable moral purity testing that leftists give to people. It's like you can never be pure enough for leftists. But at the end of the day, the only thing that the leftists that ContraPoints is complaining about is the only thing leftists want is them to be consistent with their politics. And if ContraPoints is unwilling to be consistent with their politics, whether it comes to Israel, whether it comes to I don't know, like fucking interviewing Hillary Clinton and not actually criticizing her or challenging her in any kind of questions, like that's what people take issue with. It's none of this like hippy dippy you're not pure enough for us. It's like you do tangible things that people have issues with. Anyone who puts blame on anyone ruining the left, I automatically assume they've been corrected on something morally and they didn't like it. Well, that's the thing. And that's why ContraPoints is doing this media spree right now, because she put out that statement about Israel that is getting her lambasted by the online left, and I guess she's trying to claw back some of her relevancy and kind of reform her image or explain herself here.
I feel super betrayed by Gavin Newsom, like saying he's willing to kind of back off on the trans stuff because it's not popular. It's not popular.
Well, that's. So I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself here, but
but doesn't that just go again? Like, doesn't that undercut what you were just talking about? People were saying that they feel betrayed about what Gavin Newsom espoused on trans issues, not that he talked to Ben Shapiro. They're betrayed about his actual fucking politics.
Kind of recap, there's trying to diagnose this is actually it's a pretty big situation. Like famous Media Matters study, I think 24-25 says that 90% of alt media is conservative leaning, right? So the temptation is to look at that as a reflection of where the political sentiments of most people in the country are. Obviously, social media is a very distorted mirror not 90% of the country is conservative, obviously.
Yeah. See, I didn't know that. I didn't know that.
Yeah, I mean,
there actually is a volume problem.
It's extraordinary. So they're doing a quantitative survey. There's different ways to slice the numbers. They're including like Trevor Noah is part of the left.
Okay.
We could dispute the way that they classify it, but I think obviously whether it's 90% or 80%, it doesn't matter. Alt media, overwhelmingly conservative.
Yeah.
And the reasons, I'm just recapping some of the things that you said. So jump in if I'm mischaracterizing, but asymmetry of resources. So you got big donors.
Yeah.
And then just like bait, they can kind of sow division, look at trend cycles, whatever's trending, and jump on sensational topics.
Yeah.
And then the third is that some of the positions on the left are unpopular in a majoritarian democracy.
Yes.
So we can fix 1 and 2. How do we deal with 3?
Wow, how do you deal with issues that you're campaigning for being unpopular? What? So fucking stupid. What the fuck did he say?
Oh,
we can fix 1 and 2
What are the
big
three
donors.
things?
And then just like characterizing, but asymmetry of resources. So you got big donors. And then just like bait, they can kind of sow division, look at trend cycles, whatever's trending, and jump on sensational topics.
Yeah.
Jump on sensational topics? Only conservatives can talk about sensational topics? What the fuck are they talking about? We can fix the asymmetry of resources? Once again, fucking insane. There is no fixing asymmetry of resources unless the only fixing of asymmetrical resources in terms of conservative versus left-wing media is if the left gets enough of a foothold in politics to effectively ban all billionaires, to make it illegal to ban billionaires, or make it illegal to be a billionaire. And then essentially, like, the way to fix asymmetry of resources in media is to fix asymmetry of resources in the country. That's the way you fucking fix it, to bring down the wealth disparity. That's the way you fix it. And then you're talking about how the right can jump on sensational topics, and that's fixable? Oh, what are you talking about? Yeah, no. No one has ever talked about sensational topics on the left. No, they're just hard-nosed politics all the time.
And then the third is that some of the positions on the left are unpopular in a majoritarian democracy.
Yes.
And then some of the positions... Dude, have you heard what conservatives talk about as their positions? Like, oh my god. Every single politic that the conservatives have is vastly unpopular. It's just that they're good at fucking campaigning. They're also good at rigging elections. Like, yeah, just fucking campaign. It's not that hard. You just gotta campaign. You just have to, like, put your message out there, put boots on the ground, start taking your message to the streets, start showcasing your candidates. Like, Zorn, look, I don't know. I'm gonna keep bringing this shit up. It's just like, oh my god, Democratic voters, I don't even know. Independents, like trans rights, don't poll well with independents, and so that's an issue with the left. That's an issue with centrists that feel like they have to mold themselves to every single poll that they get, to make sure that they're perfectly meshing in to what they think is going to win them the most votes, instead of just being genuine.
So we can fix 1 and 2. How do we deal with 3?
Well, I actually think, people aren't going to like this. I mean, I think there's certain issues on the left that the most high-profile spokespeople are actually, like, warranted in avoiding. Like, I personally think that at this point, like, the Democratic Party should not talk about trans people.
Dude, that's fucking sad. First of all, they're not talking about trans people. They're not, like, foisting trans rights down people's throats. What is happening is that conservatives are scapegoating trans people, and it's the left that's trying to You know, it's the left that's trying to be like, no, we should not abandon the rights of trans people. Like, don't make it a massive issue. It doesn't need to be the first and foremost, because trans people in the grand scheme of things are not a big issue. But just like Palestinians, you cannot abandon a group of people for electoral expedience. Like, you cannot just be like, okay, yeah, conservatives hate trans people. That's fine. We'll just let them be pogromed. We'll let trans people be eradicated from public life, which is what conservatives want to fucking do. You need to have a party that stands up for human rights. And I don't like this, man. I don't like the idea that ContraPoints is getting on here as a fucking trans person and being like, you gotta abandon trans issues. I mean, it's the same fucking shit as Bruce Jenner. Oh yeah, I don't think trans women should use the women's restroom. I guess Caitlyn Jenner now, but still, what the fuck?
And I think that because, I mean, it's frustrating for a lot of reasons, right? Because so much of what the general public thinks, the Democratic thinks about trans people, is completely information that they've gotten from right-wing propaganda. Because it's over, like the Democratic Party already, they hardly ever talk about trans people to begin with. Like I've seen so many people suggest, for example, that like, oh, Kamala Harris, like, you know, she pushed everyone away with all that trans ideology. And I'm like, what trans ideology? How many times on the campaign trail did Kamala Harris even mention trans people?
Yeah.
Not a lot of times.
I heard a lot about black men's crypto assets, but not trans people.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, it's so I think that people have like really been convinced what the left talks about by right media. And in part because like, well, I think right-wing media, they've also kind of mastered rage bait, right? And that you can just like churn out this content that's just designed to like irritate people. Look at what's happening in your daughter's sports. They're letting grown men beat girls up, right? Okay, is that true? Doesn't matter. Makes people angry, gets attention, right? So I think that you say that, you know, a lot of right-wing media says that and they say, this is what the Democrats are doing. And it's like, how much are the Democrats talking about trans sports? Basically not at all is the real answer to that question. But the right has really succeeded in convincing the public that that's what the left talks about.
Yeah.
So
and they do it 90% louder.
90% louder, yeah, as you say. Well, the question of how to respond to that, is it to publicly start arguing on the topic of trans sports? I don't think so. Because I think that one is so losing that it's like, I mean, I think deflection is kind of the answer. Is to say like...
What is deflection?
When they like, I don't know, in a debate situation, for example, if they want to go on and on about men and women's sports, observe that they are the one who keeps bringing this up. We're not talking about this. This is not part of our agenda. You are obsessed with this, right? In other words,
Graham Plattner does this a little bit.
Yeah. But to flip the obsession, to flip the obsession accusation.
Oh, I see.
Right?
I see.
Because it is like, I mean, I think back to like the sort of gay marriage debate in the Bush administration. I think one effective, or even like going back to like the 70s and the like...
What was going on in the 1970s with the origin of the gay rights movement?
With Anita Bryant, who was a big anti-gay, I mean, she'd originally been like a musician and...
I mean, yeah, you can, as I said, you can say this isn't a big issue, but you also need to be stalwartly in favor of trans rights. I don't think it's that complicated. To just be like, yeah, like you're the one who fucking cares about trans rights, but also trans people are real people just like everyone else.
Who became sort of an anti-gay celebrity spokeswoman. Her credibility, I think, was destroyed in pop culture, in part by characterizing her as this sort of priggish moralist who was obsessed with what other people are doing in bed, right? I mean, I think that the way, here's a more positive and likable way I can say my point. Like, I think that one mistake that I genuinely think that trans people have made in our political messaging is that it's always better to, especially in America, where the national character is kind of averse to being told what to do. Like there's this kind of individualist cowboy thing where it's like we resent the government saying how to live our lives.
It sucks because she's giving permission to the Dems to keep status quo. Yeah, I mean, that's exactly right, right? Like, it's like, I don't know, what is she going to say here that the messaging of trans people has been off on? Um, because she hasn't given a ton of good examples on how to resist this, right? She's like, oh, we should just deflect on it. What mistakes have been made? What mistakes have been made? Allowing the Dems to abandon trans people as a political unit?
So I think that the posture of the trans activist should be, don't tell me what I can do. Don't tell me what hormones I'm allowed to take. Don't tell me, you know, the mistake that goes the other direction is
the posture of the trans activist has been, don't tell me, like, don't legislate my body, and that's been a mistake that we're talking about.
You know, the mistake that goes the other direction is to lecture everyone about how they need to put pronouns in their email. Because now you're not telling them not to tell you what to do. You're telling them what to do. People don't like being told what to do.
Right.
So don't tell them what to do. Don't tell them what to say. Tell them to leave you alone. Right? And I think that's the kind of more convincing line, is that my temptation is to kind of argue from the kind of triviality. Like, really? You're expending this much resources on preventing essentially 10 people from competing in professional athletics. Why is this a major part of your platform? Don't you want to talk about the economy? Why? How about the price of gas? I noticed that's been increasing lately. Maybe that has something to do with the war that your party started. I think that could be a pretty effective, like, whataboutism kind of retort to this transgender sports thing. It's like, why are you talking about transgender sports when the price of gas is well, we'll see how it is in a couple of months, but I imagine $5. Yeah.
There's I picked this phrase up from you, but in your conspiracy video, Brandolini's Law,
yes,
that the amount of energy needed to refute bullshit, meaning conspiracy theories in that context, is an order of magnitude bigger than that needed to produce it. So if you're trying to argue a point that is maybe not winnable, it's a useless expenditure of energy, you should be talking about. I think Graham Plattner literally does this, where someone was trying to bring up trans issues in Maine, and he is like, well, what about this healthcare thing that we're not able to talk about? So I totally agree with this. I'm not going to leave you hanging out on a limb by yourself, but I think that is actually, while it may be unpopular for people who have, political sentiments or share the same ideas that we do, this is what we need to advance in a majoritarian democracy, which is a uncomfortable but necessary conversation.
Yeah, but dude, the fucking thing that pisses me off about this, and it really stems from people being high on their own supply. There's a difference between rhetorically putting tabling trans issues, right? When someone brings it up to you in a debate, when I don't know, when you're being interviewed and you're asked about trans issues, there's a difference between saying we have larger issues at play versus not fucking legislating trans protections. Like, these are issues that are still important to people, and they're important because conservatives are passing laws that are effectively trying to outlaw trans people from public existence. And so we need to still have a robust pro-trans politics to the democratic political movement. Like, they need to legislate trans protections. They need to do that. That's a thing that needs to be done, because there is a political party that is hell-bent on eradicating all trans people from public existence. And so there's a difference between rhetorically saying that we have larger issues, I'd rather talk about healthcare, and abandoning trans people altogether. Like, is ContraPoints really going to make the claim that if Democrats get control of Congress, if they get control of the House and the presidency, that they shouldn't pass, like, pro-trans laws? Like, man, I think it's fucking stupid. Like, I don't know. Yeah, it doesn't need to be the forefront of your political campaign, but it should still be a robust part of it. Protections for everyone.
You mentioned the leftist Joe Rogan before. I'm going to take us down a little bit of a path here because I want to hear your thoughts on this. This is maybe like the meat of what I'd like to discuss today. So post 2016, there's all of this right-wing content on YouTube.
Yeah.
I think the premier example of this was the Kill Stream with Richard Spencer as a guest. This is like 2015, 16. We're going back here. I don't fully remember the history. It's at that time the most quantitatively or unprecedented amount of viewers on YouTube. They're like, oh shit, there's a really big problem here.
Yeah.
And so the solution we came up with at that time was, if the right is dominating alt media or social media platforms, the left needs to have a role in that. And I was one of the people who argued vigorously for this in The Guardian and mainstream publications. The thing that we came up with was the left.
By the end of the question, the interviewer has effectively abandoned trans people, and that's the signaling that will be latched onto by party insiders as we get legislated away. Yeah. I don't know. It just reeks of, and I don't love saying this, but it really does reek of kind of some self-loathing from ContraPoints here. Like, you're saying that you don't want trans people to exist in any kind of politically relevant way just because it's difficult to argue for their existence. I don't know. My solution to this has always been, let's just say you're talking to someone. Someone's like, I'm anti-trans. Why do you care? Trans people have a right to exist just like everyone else. And then go on to talking about other things that are also important. Just a constant reaffirming of the idea that trans people are humans like everyone else is. And then it doesn't need to be a focal point of your campaign, but what should be a focal point of your campaign is the reaffirmation of human rights for all different groups of people, including trans people, including the groups of people that are being targeted by conservatives the most right now. Like, Democrats understand that when it comes to African American communities, but they don't understand it when it comes to Palestinians or trans people or anything else. It is really fucking really depressing. Okay, let's continue.
This video essay, because our arguments were less mimetic, they needed to be explained in long form. And then you were one of the premier, most celebrated creators in that. I have immense admiration for your work. Fast forward 8 years, 2024. The podcast election, so to speak, we're talking about Joe Rogan and the Manosphere and the Nelk Boys and who else? All these other guys are named and thanked in the inauguration or Trump's victory speech by the campaign. So our solution now is to make left-wing podcasts, right? I think Adam Friedland is doing a great job at this. There's many different examples to look at. But I see pretty much a direct analogy where this was the strategy before. Now the left needs to participate in social media.
Right.
And the right is winning in the influence space. And so now we need to participate. When do we get to the point where we admit that the platforms themselves are the problem?
Well,
what the platforms in terms of YouTube platforming people, or is he talking about the party platforms?
That's a good question, because if the platforms are the problem, then what? I mean, yeah.
I have a few ideas of then what, but
I'll just say that I agree. I basically agree with the history of that you've drawn. Like, I mean, I think that I was also there in 2015, noticing these exact same thing happening. I had the same experience you just described of like, I was like telling everyone about this.
I named you in all these articles.
And I was like, look what's happening with like the internet is going fascist. And everyone will be like, well, so what? Like, that's just the internet. They're just trolls. Like, why don't you ignore them? Like, why do you care about that?
Now they're in charge of the government.
It's
a big deal.
So we were right to take it seriously, in other words. Now, I think at the time I had a far over optimistic idea about how it could. I mean, my solution, and the one I tried to enact myself, was to make counter content, right? To make content that would sort of debunk or argue against or attempt to present like an attractive alternative, right? Because at the time, what I diagnosed as a problem was that you had this kind of right wing that seemed sort of fun, in terms of like they're edgy, transgressive.
Do you know how fucking hard it has been to get people on the show to admit that it was like attractive to people? Yeah, that it was like countercultural, it was edgy, it was punk.
It was completely intuitive to me at the time.
If you're like,
dude, it was fucking middle school edgy. Yeah, also, like, what time period are we talking about right now? Like, during fucking Obama? Is that what time we're talking about? It's just a fucking anti-institutionalism. The left uses it too. I hate this shit, man. Oh, it's so edgy to be racist.
It's a 14-year-old boy. Like, that shit is awesome.
Especially.
You know? Yeah.
And because, like, so much of that...
Okay, well, he literally just said it's middle school edgy. Like... Oh, it's attractive to 14-year-old boys. That's been hard for you to get your guests to admit when they come onto this show.
Content. Well, at the time it wasn't called woke. It was called SJW, Social Justice Warrior. And so much of the right-wing media on YouTube at the time was about dunking on that, taking angry feminists, triggered feminists, and then dunking on them. Ha ha ha! You're so stupid. You're so illogical.
Sargon of Akkad.
Yeah, exactly that type of content. And so my idea was to counter that by creating a persona, basically a persona that's not that far from my actual personality, which I'm also irritated by moralism, basically, right? Like I find that I'm attracted to the transgressiveness, right? And so I thought, like, look, I can do this in like a non-priggish way, and I got somewhere with that. But the thing is, like, ultimately, I think partly it is Brandolini's law type stuff, and partly it's my own artistic ambition in a way that impeded the ability of me to mass produce content in the way that the right wingers do.
It was also people in like our role is that we're in media, and journalists would say this too, but indirectly they were saying that people like me are the answer, that we can make better narratives. And that was also allowing them upward mobility and opportunity. But
didn't she used to be friends with Theron Meyer and Schuon? I don't know who Theron Meyer is. Brandolini's Law versus Debate and Algorithms, BreadTube versus Academia, Postmodern Conservatives, Saw Movies, Luigi versus Justice, Tarantino and Ultraviolence, Power versus the Left. All right. Daddy versus Mommy Politics. This is the most replayed.
But I cannot get past the idea that at the heyday of social democracy, like men were, predominant in the labor force. We had these masculine jobs where people worked in, things that were heavy. You had to sell your muscle power.
Yeah.
So how do we square this like philosophical interpretation that social democracy is feminine if like the back of labor upon which it was built was like guys lifting heavy stuff on an assembly line?
Yes. Well, I think that it has to do with because I think that the nurturant parent politics is not inherently feminine in and of itself. It specifically has to do with the role of the state, which is sort of feminine. I would have to think more about like the sort of like masculine connotations of labor movements and how that squares with mommy politics, nurturant parent morality. I mean, it's an interesting question because I do think that there are people on the left who are doing some they're doing some version of daddy politics, I think, actually.
Who would those people be?
There's people who I feel...
Who would those people be? This shit was so dumb. Dear God. Dear God. Oh, you should have spelled it with a D-E-E-R. Because I'm fighting a deer right now. I'm fighting a deer. Dear God. Daddy politics? Bro, am I just like not kitschy enough? Am I just too fucking straight and cis to care about this shit? It's like daddy politics, Bob. Like, I don't know, man. Sometimes it feels so fucking obtuse. I'm just like, what the fuck are you saying? What are we talking? Mommy politics? Oh fuck, I'm screwed here.
They'll have an implicit preference for a sort of strong masculine leader. I mean, you see this with like, say, like Stalinists. I don't know how many Stalinists we really have. I don't know how big of a problem this is. I think it's more of a problem than it used to be, actually. But
it's more of a problem
I think
than it
that
used to
part
be.
of the appeal of, I mean, like, okay, it's like this is such a fringe organization that I don't know if I even want to give it the attention. But like,
I'll bleep it. I know. I knew who you're going to bring up. Yeah.
Like
these people are desperately trying to get on the show.
This is just brain rot. The leftist answer to this is that no labor is on the masculine labor. No labor is on the masculine labor is important and dignified and should be rewarded as such. This is so vacuous. So they're saying that, like, lifting things is masculine? Bro, I'm sorry, man. Like, this is such a crazy fucking take. To say that women can't do physical labor is mind-boggling. Hey, how's it going, Hemio Taurus? Like, what the fuck do you, what do you, okay, they don't lift heavy things, like, are we talking about men in, like, quarries? Are we talking about prisoners where they just, like, chip rocks all day so that they can, do physical labor and get their energy out so they don't do, like, gang fights? What kind of physical labor are we talking about which the men are lifting things all over the place? I don't even think that, like, truck drivers is a masculine job, right? You just sit there. You just sit in a car to drive a truck. You know what's a feminine job? Fucking nursing. You're lifting shit all day. You're working all day. Oh, what else is a feminine job? Being a housekeeper. You're lifting shit all day. You're like on your hands and knees doing physical labor all day. What are we talking about?
That is left.
Like, I get every week I get something from them. Yeah,
I would consider that left daddy politics.
Right? Yeah.
Is it? I'm sorry. I'm gonna have to restart this whole thing. I'm gonna have to restart the whole segment.
Their daddy, and so the expectations of how. And I think a lot of the way that you see people respond very differently to the Democratic Party as opposed to the Republican Party has to do with the way that, like, the Republican Party is kind of their daddy, and so the expectations of how they act or how they're supposed to act are sort of daddy expectations. Again, we're assuming a sort of somewhat traditional conservative family model. So I think that, like, when Trump does authoritarian things or, like, cruel things or disciplinarian things, no one's surprised. Many people aren't even offended because it's sort of like, well, that's what he's supposed to do. But I think the sort of moral bar is much higher for liberals because liberals are supposed to be mommy. And if mommy is not taking care of me, she's failing.
Do you...
Okay. Okay. She had me for a second there. Well, conservatives just want a daddy. Like, it's reductive, but it's undeniable that when conservatives are coming up and they're talking about how Trump is like their daddy and Trump is disciplining, I don't know, he's disciplining Putin, like, he's his Putin's dad. Like, they have a fucking daddy fantasy, I guess. But all of conservative politics is like this patriarchal psychosexual bullshit where they want to control women. They feel threatened by minority groups or other different foreigners coming into the country. It's all this sexual insecurity politics coming from conservatives. But then she's like, but the Democrats are mommy, and so if Dems aren't taking care of me, they're failing? I don't even know how to respond to that. Like, conservatives also say they want their daddy to take care of them, right? Like, isn't that the point of the dad? Like, you take care of them, you're protecting. Isn't that the conservative fantasy? My dad could beat up your dad. Like, I'm resisting the urge to ask questions. What the fuck is this? What is going on?
What's your thought on this book? Do you agree with his thesis?
I think it's for them. I think for the most part, I do agree with it.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, there's, like, certain details I think I would question. Like, this I think feels out of date to me. There's a period where he analyzes the, like, Bill Clinton, Monica Lewinsky scandal, and, you know, he suggests that, like, the Republican, like, horror with which they regard this has to do with, you know, sexual morality being tightly controlled under daddy politics, where, you know, I'm not sure that's true because of the way that Donald Trump's like sexual libertinism is completely disregarded on the right.
Right.
And so I think there's actually something like the divine right of kings at play almost, where like Trump is so high a daddy that like the law does not apply to him.
That's
right.
Yep.
In fact,
yeah, but you still want like sexual purity for the women, even underneath Donald Trump's politics. We're talking. Donald Trump had sexual libertine sexuality. That was his politics.
It's partly his. There's the way that Donald Trump's like sexual libertinism is completely disregarded on the right.
Right.
And so I think there's actually something like the divine right of kings at play almost, where like Trump is so high a daddy that like the law does not apply to him.
That's
right.
Yep.
In fact, it's partly his ability to transgress the law that gives him his power.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Is that he makes a law, but he does not follow the law.
That's real power.
Yeah, that's real power. I mean, it's like incest among the pharaohs or whatever, right? Like
the morality and the law.
It's also just classic conservatism where you pretend like you're this morally pure person, but the law doesn't apply to you. I mean, this is every conservative ever, and they're seeing Donald Trump living out their power fantasies, really. Oh, he's a rapist. Oh, he sexually assaults women. I wish I could do that. Oh, he has sex with like teenagers, right? How many conservatives do we need to hear talking about how the prime fertility years for a woman in quotes, girl is like 16 years old? How many conservatives do we need to hear talking about the age of consent is too high? Why do we have an age of consent? Like, this is Donald Trump is living out everyone's fantasies. It's not. I don't think it's new. I don't think it's like a new, cool, hip thing that Donald Trump is doing. He's just a piece of shit. Like, he's just a piece of shit, and conservatives kind of like him because he's a piece of shit, and they're pieces of shit too.
It does not apply to you.
Doesn't apply
You're
to
above it.
him.
Might makes right. The most expedient way.
Right.
Let me ask you though. So this framing of like the father as, retribution, the punishing disciplinarian father, that's the kind of masculine interpretation of politics. And then the nurturing mother, which is the social democratic welfare state. This is my own hobby horse, but I cannot get past the idea that at the heyday of social democracy, like men were, predominant in the labor force. We had these masculine jobs where people worked in, things that were heavy. You had to sell your muscle power.
Yeah.
So how do we square this like philosophical interpretation that social democracy is feminine if like the back of labor upon which it was built was like guys lifting heavy stuff on an assembly line?
Yes. Well, I think that it has to do with because I think that the nurturant parent politics is not inherently feminine in and of itself. It specifically has to do with the role of the state, which is sort of feminine. I would have to think more about like the sort of like masculine connotations of labor movements and how that squares with mommy politics, nurturant parent morality. I mean, it's an interesting question because I do think that there are people on the left who are doing some like they're doing some version of daddy politics, I think, actually.
Who would those people be?
There's people who I feel have an implicit preference for a sort of strong masculine leader. I mean, you see this with like, say, like Stalinists. I don't know how many Stalinists we really have. I don't know how big of a problem this is. I think it's more of a problem than it used to be, actually. But
it's more of a problem.
But I think that part of the appeal of, I mean, like, okay, it's like this is such a fringe organization. I don't know if I even want to give it the attention. But like,
I'll bleep it. I knew who you're going to bring up.
Yeah. Like
these people are desperately trying to get on the show.
That is left.
Like I get every week I get something from them. Yeah.
I would consider that left daddy politics.
Right. Yeah. Is it left? It's something.
Well, we could argue it's not left.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's populist.
Right.
Populist is not the same as left.
Yeah.
It's not the left that I want anything to do with.
Yeah.
But they are. I mean, I guess people call it like red-brown alliance or something. But yeah, I mean, I think to be mommy politics, you also kind of have to admit at least some level of feminism, which I don't think they do. But I also think that, like, I don't know, even more mainstream right political commentary, I feel like the audience is often men.
Yes, yeah,
right?
Overwhelmingly,
yeah. And I think that there's a gendered element to the kinds of, well, let's take, for example, like what has become a big part of political discourse on the left is this kind of constant tribal infighting of libs versus leftists, right? Or liberals versus leftists, which, okay, you can define that in philosophical terms, like where like liberalism is in the tradition of John Locke and John Rawls, and it believes in rights and this kind of stuff, whereas leftism is in the tradition of Karl Marx, and it believes in abolishing capitalism.
Yes.
Okay, we all know that. But like in practice, what it is in online spaces is tribal affiliation.
Yes.
Right? Like, I guess I've recently been vocal about characterizing myself as lib, more or less embracing like a thing that people have used as a slur for me for years. But I think I think that when I say I'm a lib, I'm really talking about tribal affiliation, meaning that I am passionate about voting for Democrats in presidential elections. That seems to be the main point of contention that I have with the more explicitly leftist, not liberal tribe, where, and I guess I find the leftist, not liberal tribe is not exclusively male, but I think it is it does lean masculine. And whereas the Democratic Party is like women are kind of the backbone of the Democratic Party. And I think people sense that. I think a lot of it's especially difficult with young men, because I think a lot of young men are horrified by the possibility of belonging to a coalition wide enough to include their mother. I do think that's part of it, right? It's seen as so cringe and chuggy, or whatever word we're using now. I don't think men ever said chuggy, but there's 2 years where Gen Z women said it, and then the New York Times wrote an article about it.
Okay, God, fucking damn it, bro! I can't. All right, we're okay. Young men and elections. Next most replayed. Let's go.
But how has the right changed in the last, let's say, long 2016?
Well, they've really changed. I think that there was initial resistance to Trump in the Republican Party. So if you think about Mitt Romney as a Republican candidate, the Republican Party is an unrecognizable organization compared to what it was, right? I think that I do think that Trump kind of harnessed these energies that were always part of or for at least for 50 plus years have been part of the right wing, just the kind of libidinal drive of right wing politics.
They've been in there.
Yeah, it's been in there. But there's been decorum and a kind of need to mitigate the roughest edges of it. So I always think about this moment in the 2008 presidential election where some woman at a rally, stands up with a microphone, asks John McCain, isn't Obama an Arab?
Oh, I remember this. Yeah.
And McCain says, no, ma'am. He's a good family man. Right. Which is a bit of an awkward response.
That's incredible.
But, I think his heart was in the right place.
Right.
But I think that that woman now, she can just say that. You can just say that now on the Republican Party.
Totally.
And so I think that part of why people on the right like Trump so much is that I see him as his obscenity and his kind of vulgarity and sadism is experienced by his followers as liberation. It's a liberation of aggressive impulses that they are tired of having to repress.
Yeah.
In other words, so they view leftist or they view liberal politeness, political correctness, as I see it, wokeness, as this basically phony pretend thing that is this tedious, insincere form of politeness that's thrust upon them and that they resent. Right? It's nagging, it's scolding, it's this, and they sort of don't believe that anyone really believes it. And so Trump is saying what we're all thinking, and that permission to just be openly sadistic is a massive relief.
Okay, sorry. Next video. Here we go.
Is there something else that I'm missing here that's your critique of the left?
My frustration with the left is...
Let's go.
Is there something else that I'm missing here that's your critique of the left?
My frustration with the left is...
At least obviously
a communist, right? And that's true. You are probably a communist if you fit that description. I think that the Democratic Party, AOC,
admission.
Okay, so I joke about how we vote for Satan to stop Donald Trump. There probably is a line. I've yet not found it yet of
the clips are
what moral depth to which I would stoop to stop Donald Trump.
So what does that mean?
Yeah.
So I'm here with Natalie Wynn, aka ContraPoints, who is one of the biggest and most prolific and I think most efficacious video essayists on the left in BreadTube. I don't know if you embrace that term, but it's really nice to be. You condemn the term BreadTube. Why is that?
Well, I had never thought it made any sense. The phrase BreadTube is a reference to the conquest of bread, an anarchist book. I'm not an anarchist. I don't know why this framing has been imposed on, but it is what it is. You don't get to choose these things.
How do you identify politically?
I identify as a left liberal at this stage, is how I would describe myself.
That's good.
I would say that I'm aligned with the left wing of the Democratic Party, like AOC kind of politics.
Well, AOC, at least at one point in her life, self-described as a socialist or a democratic socialist, at
That's
least,
right.
did she not?
Yes, that's right.
Would you define yourself that way as well?
I think I would at one time also have. I think now I would say I'm probably more of a social democrat. But for me, my attitude towards politics is very not, well, it's very non-philosophical in a way, because I feel that I react to the situation that I'm in. So I think that, am I a social democrat in the sense that I think capitalism is like this amazing system? Like, no, not really. I just think that social democracy is like the most plausible path to improving what we have. If I like found myself in, I don't know, a Stalinist country, I probably would not be advocating capitalist revolution. I would be advocating like, well, I don't know, some kind of like Dengist reforms or something.
So, I mean, from my perspective, as someone who's obviously been a witness to some of the backlash and at least your career over the last, 5 or 6 years when I've been more plugged into the online left, it does feel sometimes like some of the pushback you get is because there's a gap in your perceived sort of identification or self-identification, at least at one point, in some of the political stances that you take maybe in a post-2020 world. Does that feel right to you?
Yeah, I do think that there is like a definite proportion of the backlash that I received that's based on a kind of misreading of me as being sort of having always been more radical than I really was. I mean, I think that part of it is like the aesthetic of because I started out doing, I'm like this like transgender YouTuber who is making videos about how fascism is bad. This is very like communist coded behavior, at least in like internet culture, right? Like if you're a trans person on the internet, you're complaining about Nazis all day, you're probably a communist, right? And that's true. You are probably a communist if you fit that.
You're a trans person. I guess like maybe maybe the key indicator there being trans person. I don't fucking know though. Okay, we'll go with that
description. I mean, I think that I kind of did have a more. So I mean, I used to be quite centrist in that, like in 2016, I think I was like a Hillary Clinton supporter in the 2016 primary for the reason that I thought that she was more viable than Bernie Sanders. Then she lost. And I think that did prompt me to rethink a little bit what was possible, combined with the fact that Donald Trump at the time seemed like this kind of crackpot candidate who, how could a serious country elect a person like this, right? Well, joke's on me. But like I think that did make me open-minded to like, well, like maybe like it is time to consider, because I had I had campaigned for Obama in 2012, and so my experience was like talking to these like median voters in like Ashburn, Virginia or whatever, and like the amount of effort needed to convince them that actually giving people access to healthcare, even if they have a pre-existing condition, did not amount to a totalitarian Islamic socialist takeover of the government. Like it made me think like, okay, everyone just hates.
No one thought she was communist. Dude, I don't. Yeah, I mean, I don't really know anything about ContraPoints. Yeah, she's pretty cool. I guess she's not cool actually. Maybe before people thought she was cool.
The word socialism so much, like why bother? But then I don't know. I guess I questioned if maybe that was. So I think I was experimenting a bit more in that era, and also I did get audience.
Is that loud enough for you guys?
Somewhat, I think, because I had a much more leftist audience. But I think we've clashed over my like, I suppose like more pragmatic, moderate stances on things.
I want to come back to this issue of pragmatism, but I want to say that on some level, I empathize with having the notion, especially coming, as someone who's, part of a marginalized group whose interests don't necessarily drive politics and sometimes drive people away from my politics, right? That I remember in 2007 being asked by like an adult, coming straight out of college, asked by an adult, who I supported in the primary, not really knowing anything about Barack Obama and kind of having the knee-jerk reaction that I should say Clinton, because I would be perceived as doing wish casting if I said Obama, or it was expected because I'm Black that I would say Obama, and that it was so unlikely that I seemed like the pragmatic person to say Hillary Clinton. And then I had a similar experience over the course of the primary when Hillary Clinton revealed herself in various ways and frankly actively talked me out of her support. And then by the time 2016 came around, and I also want to validate that, many Black voters did not think that Barack Obama could win and did not align behind him until after he had won Iowa and demonstrated his viability with white voters, right? So I think there's something very relatable about your approach. I think the question people have is, once this lesson was learned in 2016, that who we were told was electable wasn't who was actually electable. And that there was this appetite in the country for somebody that was more radical, that was more anti-establishment in the form of Donald Trump. And that there was this phenomenon of the Bernie to Trump voter where those same Trump voters would have been interested in someone like Bernie Sanders, who didn't just, talk about healthcare the way that Obama did, but did so in a much more radical way, in a way that was thought to be somehow alienating to the public, but which was in fact populist. If that lesson was learned in 2016, I guess the question people have is what caused you to sort of move back to this idea that a more centrist pragmatism or incrementalism was going to be a more electable and politically viable route?
Well, I think part of it is, in 2020, I supported Bernie Sanders in the primary.
I remember. We talked about it on the show, I think.
Oh, maybe we did. Okay, so it hasn't been 10 years. Okay, but Biden won fairly decisively, both in the primary and the general election, which seemed like a kind of step back from the edge to me. So I think that kind of pushed me in a more moderate direction, also as a result of
Biden won the primary, and that pushed you in a more moderate direction.
Clashing with people who were absurd. I think that kind of okay, so it hasn't been 10 years. Okay, but Biden won fairly decisively, both in the primary and the general election, which seemed like
he didn't. The entire Democratic establishment had to come together to collude to give Biden the win. Also, what the fuck? Look, there's a difference between being like, oh, I just react to things that happen in front of me, and being like, oh, Biden won decisively. That must mean that I'm a moderate now. What are you talking about? Do you have sincerely held convictions, or do you just go with what you think is going to get you the most opportunities to suck up to power?
Like a kind of step back from the edge to me. So I think that kind of pushed me in a more moderate direction, also as a result of, I think, clashing with people who were abstainers. I felt that, because I've always seen Donald Trump as very menacing, as a nightmarish presence in American politics, who I am willing to resist by any means necessary, essentially. And so I think that I got frustrated with the opposition to voting for Biden. And then in 2024, I think my frustration increased. And I feel like now, I see the second Trump administration as being even worse than the first, which I thought it would be. So I feel fairly disillusioned with any kind of larger ideological project. I guess we could probably spend all day litigating why exactly Kamala Harris lost in 2024 by the margins that she did. But the way I diagnose it is largely that voters moved to the right. So this has me feeling probably the way that liberals felt, around in 1991 or whatever, when you had almost 12 years of Reaganism at that point, and it's just well, my sense of so there's a reason why I'm not a Democratic Party press person, right? Because my messaging is not inspiring at all. I'm aware of this. And to be clear, no politician should say the things that I'm saying, because they're not inspiring. They're depressing. But that's why I'm not a politician, right? Because I don't have an inspiring message, and you need I feel like the politicians that I've seen in my life who have the best messaging are people like Barack Obama and Zoran Mamdani, who both have this kind of radiant energy of hope. That is almost more than any specific policy idea. It's the kind of vibes that they have. I do not possess this quality at all.
Okay, but that phrase
The reason you're not a politician is because you're not charismatic? The fuck?
It's like almost more than any specific policy idea. I think that that's where the rub comes in, and where I see the frustration that some of the left articulates toward you, not just you, but anybody who takes a more, who believes authentically that a more moderate position is the more electable, sort of smarter, politically advantageous one. Because many of us look at Zohran Mamdani and even Barack Obama in 2008, and I would also say Bernie Sanders in 2016 and 2020, and say that he was able to, these people were all able to snatch movements out of nowhere, right? Obama was not a likely choice. Senator Sanders didn't even seem to even believe his own campaign was going to have legs when he launched in like the middle of the grass with like 3 cameras around in 2016. And obviously Zohran Mamdani was polling in single digits in a long shot, at least when I interviewed him last February. But I would argue that what propelled all of those individuals into the limelight was not their moderation, but that they stood out among a crowd of moderates who were unwilling to make true criticisms about their own party and the other side, and the ways in which they are often aligned along because of their shared corporate donors, and maintaining substantially the status quo. And so that, to me, is what so many of us learned from 2016, and what Bernie's greatest sort of gift and contribution to the political space was, that calling out corporate elites, calling out the Epstein class, calling out super PAC donors, calling out the military-industrial complex is not something that will get you marginalized and sidelined, but in fact will earn the trust of the public at large. What do you say to that argument? That in fact, the people that you were sort of characterizing as successful because of their, the person, I don't want to mischaracterize, you put words in your mouth, but charisma, personality, intangibles, in fact, are popular because it is message driven, it's policy driven.
Well, it's definitely a combination. Like, I don't think you can have any policy and win based on vibes.
Wow. Wow. What a brave take.
And I agree with what you're saying about like populism is very in at the moment, right? And I do think that type of messaging could succeed. I mean, I see like the place to litigate this will be in the primary, right?
I fucking hate this framing. Populism is in right now. Okay, but the reason populism is a way that you can win elections is because you're meeting the people where they are. Like, wouldn't it be populism would not be an effective tactic if people were feeling good in their lives, if people were feeling like the system was working for them, and they needed a little bit less social welfare, right? And they needed a little bit less help just surviving in this country. By the way, I'm so fucked in this combat.
Well, we didn't get to have one, regrettably,
no,
in 2024.
Not in 2024. And I do think it's reprehensible that Biden did not drop out sooner.
And there are people who I have to say would argue that, I know I've heard you and Joshua Citarella recently seem to agree that 2020 was a fair race and that the rigging that happened in 2016 of the Bernie campaign was overstated. But it's worth noting. Yeah, it's worth noting that people feel very differently. And even centrists like Jake Tapper in his book with Alex Thompson readily acknowledge that 2016 was rigged, that there was a call that went out that had all the candidates drop out after Biden had failed to win the first 4 contests and circle the wagons around South Carolina. That, of course, there was, $70 million of free media that Biden got after winning South Carolina, that they then changed the order of the primary contest so that a pro-Biden state could go early enough so that they wouldn't have to do quite the same level of machination. But that, again, you had a mass dropping out and coalescing behind a candidate in order to make it seem as though there's an inevitability there with Joe Biden that there simply wasn't. Sorry, I told kind of 2 stories at the same time with 2016 and 2020. But, that was a 2020 story. And in 2016, It was a much more acute. And the Democratic Party, of course, the DNC admitted that they were entitled to and did, in fact, put their finger on the scale in favor of Hillary Clinton. So it does beg the question, by some accounts, and I don't expect you to, agree with this, but I do have to just put out there.
I completely agree with what Brianna and Gray just said there.
Some accounts.
Yeah. ContraPoints said, "Oh, Biden won decisively. That meant that I'm more moderate now." And then Brianna's like, "Okay, but they colluded to make him win over Bernie Sanders, the more popular politician."
We haven't had a.
She cooks hard. I've never seen Finkelstein backed into a corner. It wasn't fun. She talked with Finkelstein.
Real primary since 2008.
I see rigging as too strong a word for what you're describing. I think that, yes, Joe Biden and Hillary Clinton were like some advantage was given to them by having this built-up institutional support within the party. But I also think that like but like in 2020 when you say that like okay there's this sort of conspiracy of candidates to all drop out, except for Biden giving him this advantage that he wouldn't otherwise have had against Bernie Sanders. Like, yes, but I feel like that also contains like a tacit admission that the only way for Bernie Sanders to have won would be to split the center-left vote.
Oh, I agree. So I think that is true. And that is also how Donald Trump won, right? Donald Trump, the Republicans did not do that same thing in 2016. And he was able to win. He's never had a supermajority of the majority of a primary vote in that exact same way. So I think if we were having a different kind of conversation, I absolutely put it on Bernie Sanders in the campaign to have anticipated this outcome and to have done the work that needed to be done, that even if the Democratic centrists maneuver the way that they did and were expected to maneuver, he would still able to win, still be able to win. And that's on him. That's, at the end of the day, that was the responsibility of the campaign.
Putting more effort to win in South Carolina and so on.
Well, I don't think that Bernie had to win South Carolina to win. I think that in some levels, the uphill battle, the frustration is that, Biden loses the first, 4 contests dramatically, right? It's like 4th or 5th place in New Hampshire or whatever it was. And a world where the media was fair would have covered Bernie's win in Nevada as a huge proof of electability, given that he won 70% of the Latino vote. And he would have gotten that huge media boost in the polls after that win and all of the other wins in those early contests. But you can imagine that even if others didn't drop out, if the media continues to ring the alarm bells that Bernie isn't electable because of socialism and Biden is because of Black people, that he might still even be able to carry the day the same way in 2016, those same arguments were made about Hillary Clinton, which were fundamentally untrue, right? As you just explained.
But I guess I wonder, like, I question, like, just how, I mean, I'm sure it has some effect, but how much does the media sort of framing a candidate as unelectable affect the actual voting choices of primary voters?
Well, Natalie, you said that you thought that Hillary Clinton was more electable than Bernie in 2016, right? And you're a very informed and savvy person. And yet every single poll from that election cycle showed that Bernie averaged 10 points up on on Donald Trump, while Hillary Clinton never got out of the margin of error over Donald Trump. And in some ways, her loss to him was perfectly anticipated by the polls.
But not by the
guess who else's loss was perfectly anticipated by the polls? Kamala Harris.
Primary votes.
Right, but I mean, this is the thing. This is what's so interesting about that Black voter example we gave in the beginning about how Black voters didn't get behind Barack Obama until they believed he was electable, which means that white people would vote for him, which is why the Iowa contest was so important for Obama, right? And similarly, a lot of voters, what their primary concern is beating Republicans. Democratic-leaning voters want to beat Republicans, and so they'll vote for whoever they believe is the most electable candidate. Which is why, when centrists sometimes make this argument, well, Bernie didn't win, or, people just didn't like him. When the media's role in arguing aggressively that he couldn't win, and you have, CNN hosts saying that there's going to be beheadings in Central Park because of the coming socialist raids. Well, of course, what else could the voting public possibly believe? They were never once told about how every single poll showed that Bernie was the most electable candidate.
So I guess my concern with this is just that, like, to put so much blame on the media. I mean, like, sure, like, you can always blame the media. Like, I blame the media for a lot of it. I blame the media for a lot of Donald Trump's success because they kind of have inadvertently, but it's like the media is what it is. And like, I think that this needs to be, I guess I feel like there's a kind of like defeatism contained in this kind of idea of it all being rigged, where it's like, a progressive candidate to win in the Democratic Party, I think it is possible, right? But I feel that it is this kind of, I see it as, defeatist to suggest that it's all hopelessly rigged.
Well, I don't think it's defeatist. I don't think it's hopeless.
It's defeatist to suggest that it's hopelessly rigged. Yeah, man, I can't even provide any commentary because I think Brianna's doing a stellar job here. It's just like, it's not defeatist to recognize the structural imbalances in which you're up against and then try to figure out strategies best to combat that and overcome it. Like, it's the opposite of defeatist. Recognizing that things are rigged means that you're able to craft strategies to overcome the rigging. And if you're the type of person to be like, well, let's just not focus about how it's rigged because that's defeatist, it seems like you're kind of just defending the institutional rigging against leftist candidates. That Ethan Fetterman thumbnail.
Please.
Peace out, Andrew.
What is the it? What is the it exactly? And what do we mean by progressive candidate?
The primary, let's say.
Okay. So if you were to ask me, I would say that my attitude is the opposite of defeatist. But it is, I think I'm being pragmatic. I worked for Bernie, obviously, in 2020. I believed enough in the possibility of winning as a progressive within the Democratic Party to, take a pretty significant pay cut and go be a national press secretary and give my life to this. But then I learned the lesson from that, which is that my fundamental belief is that if you are genuinely progressive, meaning that you take a aggressive stance against the interest groups that are at the root of making life bad for working class Americans, meaning the banking industry, the energy sector, calling out corporate PACs, foreign influence PACs like APAC and all of the rest, the health insurance lobby, obviously, because you advance populist policies that are counter to those interests, right? Like universal health care, ending wars, the Green New Deal, et cetera. That because those interests are so embedded in the Democratic Party as a corporate party, they will stop at nothing to stop you. I think that is very difficult to argue with. Is it possible that one might be successful despite those efforts? I think it's possible. But I think that it's frankly so unlikely that we have to, as a left, heighten the contradictions, make that really clear to the voting public, and encourage the public to focus their energy on other strategies to affect change.
I think this is where this is where the real disagreement begins.
Sure, let's get into it.
Right, like I think because I think that I guess what I sort of don't understand about your position is I don't understand what is like the theory of change here, and on like what time frame do you imagine this happening? Because I guess the way I see it is that the consequences of Donald Trump winning have been so dire that it's like very difficult for me to take seriously the suggestion that like, well, it's a correct, it's the idea that we should have diverted all energy away from Kamala Harris to focus on some kind of more revolutionary long-term change. It's like, well, isn't there some way that we can like?
No one fucking said that. There were literally zero leftists that were like, we shouldn't vote for Kamala Harris because we want some long-form change. I guess there were some that are like, I don't know, accelerationists, right? Everyone was campaigning for Kamala Harris. They're just like, please, for the love of God, can you be more pro-Palestine and less pro-Israel? Please, just like, even just a wink and a nod in the direction of pro-Palestinian protesters, anything. They were begging for permission to vote for Kamala Harris. Okay.
I don't know. Both election, or it's the idea that we should have diverted all energy away from Kamala Harris to focus on some kind of more revolutionary long-term change. It's like, well, isn't there some way that we can like, I don't know, both elect a plausible center-left candidate and also have a longer-term, more progressive strategy, considering like stuff like, allowing Elon Musk to come in and destroy USAID, and which is probably killing hundreds of thousands of people, and like the Supreme Court that's overturned Roe v. Wade and is gutting voting rights, and all these like fairly difficult to reverse, like catastrophic consequences. Like that is like a fairly massive short and medium-term sacrifice for a potential maybe long-term benefit.
Well,
but Brianna Joy-Gray was not talking about the idea that we needed to let Donald Trump get elected here. She was just like I don't understand how we got to this part of the conversation. We started off talking about how the election was rigged against Bernie Sanders, and the media is part of the democratic institution that maintains the preferred Democratic candidate. And now ContraPoints is like, yeah, but Donald Trump winning an election was really bad. No one's arguing against that. Where did you come up with that?
Yeah, go ahead.
Maybe, yeah. Maybe,
by the way, I feel like her makeup is really good in this video.
Maybe, I guess I would maybe need to hear you explain what you think is the theory of long-term change here that comes from voting third party, for example.
Well, I would say two things. One, that and third-party voters did not cause Trump to win the first time or the second time, right? There were more Bernie than Trump voters, as you know. Okay. Two, I would say I'm not, while I might believe, frankly, somewhat pessimistically, that but for things getting worse and having a sort of an accelerationist bent, people are not going to wake up and make things better. I am not, in fact, an accelerationist because I wouldn't actively try to make things worse. And it wasn't me arguing that Donald Trump should win.
Yeah, I mean, no serious person was talking about that whatsoever.
Over Kamala Harris. My argument was that Kamala Harris is absolutely going to lose if she declines to move on Gaza. And we were right about that, right?
Do you think that Gaza is the issue that cost her the election?
I think it's been pretty proven out by the data. So what we have is a number of studies, including a study by IMEU, that polls Biden 2020 voters as to why they didn't vote for Kamala Harris in 2024, right? Like what makes up that deficit that made him win and her lose. And the number one issue is Gaza. The number one issue. Now, so it's not the majority, it's not above 50% of people, right? But of all of the issues listed at 27% or whatever it was, 29%, it was close to 30%, was Gaza. So there were a lot of different things, right? The short primary, Biden's senility, the sense that they were, dishonest and hiding that from us as a public, the lack of a primary, all of these things. But when you saw how many voters, particularly in swing states like Michigan, were openly saying, we will vote for you. The uncommitted movement, remember, wasn't a we're not going to vote for you movement. It was a we're holding our votes hostage in exchange for this policy concession, which frankly would make you more electable to the broader public because nobody supported at that stage. Very few people, the polls were already overwhelmingly in favor of ending support for Netanyahu's government. And the choice was made by the Democratic Party, not people like me, to choose an alliance with Benjamin Netanyahu and Israel and its genocide.
Bro, I can't even provide any analysis because Brianna is taking the words right out of my mouth. No, I 100% agree with her. Like, yes, there were multiple things that Kamala Harris could have done differently to win the election, but Gaza was a big part of it, and you're trying to win. Like, correct me if I'm wrong, I've never ran for an office anywhere, but I feel like politicians want to win as many votes as they can, right? Like, this is what I don't understand when I hear liberals, or as ContraPoints self-describes, a leftist liberal, or whatever the fuck she said. Whenever I hear liberals talking about the election, it's like, okay, but you do want to win as many votes as possible, right?
Over winning an election. And Donald Trump, who also obviously is a genocidal candidate, at least had the sort of political savvy to try to blur the lines and lie to the public about being a quote unquote anti-war public. And if you ask a lot of voters, they'll say, I know that Trump was lying to me. I know he wasn't anti-war, but at least it wasn't as in my face as someone like Kamala Harris saying we're going to have the most lethal army and we're not going to break from Benjamin Netanyahu and I'm not going to break from Biden and his policy.
So I guess I think that I sort of don't really see it as a very strong message that has been sent to the Democrats that they lost this election, considering that Donald Trump won, a candidate who is more unconditionally fanatical in his allegiance to Israel, right? And who is even more who has gone further than the Democrats, who has banned all funding for UN aid and relief to Palestinian refugees, and who was threatening to deport people.
Well, Biden did that.
Biden did what?
Biden cut UNRWA funding. That happened under Biden in spring of 2024, right? Israel claimed that there were 4 Hamas terrorists in UNRWA, and as a consequence, all UNRWA funding was cut, and that's when the humanitarian crisis really amplified, as opposed to the starvation, the what do you call it, collective punishment really amplified. Right. So I take your point.
That's a factual question. I'll have to look.
I'm pretty confident about that because I was having to report on this on a daily basis on Rising before.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's what happened because essentially it's exactly as she said. But yeah, Israel was having issues with UNRWA because they were killing their, they didn't want to, I guess, look bad by killing their staff, and so they just said that they were terrorists, and that happened under Biden's administration, and then the United States cut funding to it. So, dude, the thing is this, the Democrat and ContraPoints is talking about, USAID cuts, because she can't talk about Palestine, because the Democrats are just as bad on Palestine as the Republicans are. They're just as bad. And so ContraPoints cannot bring it up, and no liberals can bring up the issues of Israel and Palestine, because that's a point that defeats their entire worldview of vote blue no matter who, but really just vote for the centrist lib that abandons trans people and is pro-Israel.
Be clear, I was fired because of that exact kind of reporting, right? Reporting on the facts of what was happening in America's lockstep and enabling of Israel's genocide. But the bigger point I would say is this. I can readily concede that there are many ways in which Trump is worse than Biden, obviously, and that Republicans generally are worse than Democrats. I think the question, people in who share my politics have the feeling that one party being worse than the other is an insufficient reason to vote for the lesser of two evils, when there is enormous latitude for the better party to simply stop being evil. And that the big trick of liberalism is convincing folks that you have to be at least a little bit evil in order to win, even when the opposite is true. Even when supporting Medicare for all makes you more electable, even when supporting Palestinian rights makes you more electable. Democrats are making choices not, in fact, based on electability, but based on what their corporate donor base wants them to do. And if we ever want both parties to stop slipping more and more in that direction, and for there to be any red lines in the sand,
and this is the big thing. It has nothing to do with electability, and it has everything to do with donability. How easy it is for the politicians to allow their donors to make donations to them. Or from the discard pile, but let's try this.
For something as cataclysmic as a genocide, somebody has to say, you have to earn my vote at some point in this. So I would turn your question me back around to you. On what timeline, at what point is there ever going to be a litmus test among liberal democratic voters that says this is a kind of evil that I will not succumb to, that I will not support with my vote?
I mean, I see the place to litigate that isn't a primary, and I understand the frustration with not having a primary in 2024. Right. But that is the way this ought to work. And
that's also bullshit, because you can also apply leverage to politicians during the fucking general election. What do you think the general election is for? You're trying to win people's votes. Like, you can apply leverage in the primary, which people did. The uncommitted movement voted uncommitted during the fucking primary, and they were also applying pressure during the general election.
I expect it to work in 2028. But I think
you're going to have a fair primary in 2028?
I think so. I mean, so I guess I'm not as impressed as you are by the claim of rigging, which I feel like is a somewhat exaggerated claim for a institutionally backed candidate having an advantage. I mean, I think that I also feel like there's some tension between. So you're saying that you don't think that third party voters or abstaining progressives are the reason why Kamala Harris lost. So in what sense is then Gaza the issue? Because again, it's like if you look at the map, it looks, and if you look at how many votes Jill Stein got, less than 1%, versus the significant electoral college and popular vote victory of Donald Trump, it looks it looks like voters shifted to the right, in other words. And so,
why do you say that?
Well, because
on what?
Because Kamala Harris didn't lose to a huge amount of voters turning third party. She lost to people turning to Donald Trump.
And people staying home. So take the Muslim vote, for example. Okay. I think about 50% of Muslim Americans voted Republican and the other half voted Green. Yes. Because of Gaza, yes. Right? So, you can sit here and have a debate about the wisdom of voting for Donald Trump when he was going to be worse. But when I say it's not on the voters, it's because there is enormous latitude for Kamala Harris to simply say, you know what, there's a genocide, you're right. Benjamin Netanyahu is unpopular. His government is unpopular even within Israel. I stand with, I will not support sending weapons and arms to Israel. Ceasefire now. And she could have won, right?
So why not? For that to be true, doesn't it have to be the case that she lost the election because of protest voters or abstainers, as opposed to
what I'm trying to argue is that, one, Jill Stein voters, as you point out, are not the ones. But people who chose to stay home or vote for Trump, absolutely. Okay. I mean, definitionally you lose because some quantity of voters that voted for your team before either stayed home or went to the other side. And my argument is that those voters could easily have been kept in the pen. Now, to be clear, my personal politics are, I don't think they should go back to the Democratic Party. I don't think anybody should go back to the Democratic Party. Yeah. But if I'm a Democratic strategist, if I'm Kamala Harris, I don't get to argue that I was entitled to those votes that I easily could have gotten by simply changing my position to a more populist one. It's almost akin to saying, if I'm Kamala Harris and I come out on stage and decide to say, I hate everybody who lives west of the Mississippi. If you live west of the Mississippi, I do not want you to vote for me. If you live west of the Mississippi, we're going to bomb you and kill you. And then election day comes and she's like, gosh, man, it's really unfair that I lost the election because I antagonized everybody west of the Mississippi. Like, it was the electable position for her to take, and she declined to take it. So at what point do we hold politicians accountable for choosing to throw an election rather than to modify America's relationship with the genocidal country?
So I think there's two questions here, right? Like, one is, whose fault is it that she lost? Kind of a descriptive question. And then the other is, should we have advocated that she lose? a more of a normative question. So like the descriptive question, like I think the blame for why an election turns out the way it does is always going to be widely distributed, right? And like, of course, some fault is on Biden and on Kamala Harris. Like, I do think that, like, yeah, I would agree with the criticism that the Biden administration failed to they did not have the agility to respond to the situation in Gaza by breaking from, like, you know, decades of bipartisan consensus that Israel's our closest ally and blah 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 blah, right? Like, they did not have the agility to read the situation and
insane. What the fuck? They did not have the agility to read the situation? Like, this is just so far away from reality. It was like watching someone fall down the stairs in slow motion. And when did this fucking thing take place? 2023? When in October of 2023, when on October 7th, I'm like, well, fuck. Biden better step in and stop Israel from doing genocide against Palestinians. Like, it was extremely simple. He better step in and stop this humanitarian crisis from happening, because otherwise the Democrats are going to have the blood of genocide on their hands, right? It's literally like day one, when you see what Israel was posting, oh, we're going to kill all of them, we're going to murder all of the Palestinians, they're all to blame. Day one, it's avoidable. Oh, they don't have the agility to understand this. What the fuck, dude? Then we're like slowly descending into hell with the lack of a Democratic primary. Like, okay, you funded a genocide, you funded and abetted a genocide, and you provided the political shielding for Israel on the global stage. Great. Good job. That's been done. Can we at least get the fucking guy who's carrying this genocide around his neck like a fucking albatross out of the running? But no, not even a fucking primary. We didn't even do a primary and let him earn his keep. We're just like, nah, there's not going to be a primary. You're voting for him. And then the uncommitted movement happened, and the guy got fucking blown out of the water. Like massive amounts of people voting uncommitted to say, please get him the fuck out of this election. We don't want to vote for him. Then finally, the debacle, which was the debate of Biden versus Trump, when he couldn't like put on his goddamn pants. And then the Dems finally are like, all right, let's get him out of here. This is embarrassing. This is too far. Then we got Kamala Harris. Wow, the last gasp, the last hope of getting Trump fucking falling down the stairs into the hell that is Trump waiting at the bottom for us. And Kamala Harris still couldn't fucking stick the landing. She has said that, oh yeah, I want to do anything different than what Biden did. She said that, like maybe we should do a ceasefire, but Israel has a right to defend itself. The Democrats are like a fucking fly drawn to the fire, which is Israel. Oh, we didn't have the agility? It sounds like they're just fucking stupid. Oh my god, this pissed me off so much. Oh, we didn't have the agility to avoid doing genocide. Oh my god, because decades of bipartisan agreement. Blah, blah, blah. Shut the fuck up. Just say you want to genocide Palestinians. I'd respect you more if you're just honest, instead of giving me this mind-numbing bullshit political analysis.
Failed to they did not have the agility to respond to the situation in Gaza by breaking from, like, you know, decades of bipartisan consensus that Israel's our closest ally and blah 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 blah, right? Like, they did not have the agility to read the situation and change. Like, I agree with that.
What do you mean they didn't have the agility?
I mean that they acted in a way that was consistent with how American foreign policy has been for decades, as opposed to recognizing that this situation demanded a kind of break from that.
Well, yes and no, right? Because there are these, I broadly know what you're saying. I'm not trying to be so nitpicky, but there are these moments where American presidents, Reagan famously, has picked up the phone and said, Israel, you have to stop bombing Lebanon. This is a bridge too far. And they stop, right? They understand that their ability to exist is contingent on U.S. aid, right? Okay.
I agree that, like, it is a failure of the Biden administration. They should have been far more aggressive in conditioning aid. I agree.
Or conditioning it at all. To be clear, they didn't condition. They violated American law in not conditioning aid at all to Israel.
But there, I mean, Well, okay, I won't get into saying why I think Trump is the worst, which I do think he is. But I think that the second question is still like, should people have, because
is literally incapable of accepting any kind of criticism for the Democrats. Well, Trump's worse. It's just a fucking gut reaction. Well, Trump's worse. Trump's worse. Okay.
You're not just saying that it's Kamala Harris's fault that she lost. You're also saying that you think that she should have lost. You want her to have lost, and you advocate.
That's a separate argument that I was trying to be transparent about my own.
The point is that she's explaining why she lost. Holy fuck. Holy fuck.
Politics, which I recognize are more radical than most. So I don't really want to, I mean, we can, but it's like a bit of a side quest. It's like me litigating that like I'm anti-circumcision. Nobody really cares. Like it's not really the point of this.
Well, I don't think it's a side quest at all. Like I think like advocating to abstain or to vote third party, that to me is the issue.
Well, no, because there's a difference between me, who has more of a radical or like has a much more pessimistic belief about the Democratic Party and its ability to be saved, and who frankly thinks we should just get to it and focus the bulk of our efforts towards starting something, growing the Green Party or PSL or whatever third party we as a community want to invest in. And what I think is the more accessible argument that I think liberals need to engage with, which is, do you want the Democratic Party to represent your interests? Do you want it to be a populist in the meaning of a kind of a majoritarian populist party that is therefore more electable because it is advancing popular policy items, right? That include not supporting endless wars, including not supporting genocide, include supporting Medicare for all, et cetera. And if you as a regular, mostly normie Democrat who supports those things, like 88% of Democrats who support Medicare for all, I think it's absolutely your obligation to say that I'm not going to give you my vote. It makes no sense when 88% of Democrats and almost half of Republicans support Medicare for all for you to be putting up even a single candidate in a presidential cycle who does not support Medicare for all. But that's exactly what we get every time. And it's an independent like Bernie who'll come along and be the one guy in the room who's willing to advocate for the obviously popular and electable thing. And if we're having an electability conversation fundamentally and a how to beat Trump conversation fundamentally, or JD Vance or Tucker Carlson, whoever it is that comes down the transom, then why wouldn't you enthusiastically be saying, oh my gosh, yes, we have to push these people into the electable position?
I still feel that it's like a bit evasive that you're trying to. Well, so your
it's
argument,
a bit evasive.
We ought to, the blame for Kamala Harris losing ought to be on Kamala Harris and Joe Biden. But you're also
and the Democratic Party, broadly.
And the Democratic Party. But you also do not support that people vote for them. So it's like it seems like you're saying it's their fault that they lost, but you also wanted them to lose.
I see the disconnect. Yeah. My belief that we should abandon the Democratic Party altogether becomes from my observation that pushing them doesn't work. Okay. So I look, if people tried to push them and it worked, then my priors would be invalidated and I'd have to be open to the idea of working within the party again, right? And I might have an evolution back to the center hypothetically. But the reason I personally, through my proximity to the Bernie campaign and following politics over the last 5 years and witnessing what Biden did with his trifecta for the first 2 years, his disinterest in shoring up the Supreme Court, packing the Supreme Court, doing any kind of real Supreme Court reform, even as the leaked memo that Roe was about to get overturned came out, all of that, the Build Back Better, bifurcation, the abandonment of the $15 minimum wage, all of those things have led me to the conclusion that I happen to hold. But I also acknowledge that other people aren't there yet. And to get to where I am, they have to witness what I've seen. So I would love to see them try to push the party. I suspect that they will fail and that they will come around to my side. But I do think the obligation is, of course, to push the party. Yeah.
This is sort of what I'm not following, is that you seem to be suggesting that liberals need to be pushing the Democrats left, although you think that is a futile project.
Yeah, I think that it will.
So if it's futile, then why should we do it?
Because it is a way to heighten the contradictions and cause people to have a consciousness about the Democratic Party and who they really are. And it's a consciousness that has started to happen under Bernie Sanders. And it really blossomed because of Gaza. Because so many people who weren't that political or maybe even were right-leaning and were anti-war in a right-leaning way saw what was very obvious, which
I also think it's so silly. Like, these things don't exist in a vacuum, right? And we need to be, when we're talking about something as broad as politics, it really helps to focus on what the fuck specifically are we saying right now. When we're talking about pushing the Democratic Party left, right? The leftists need to push the Democrats to come over to their side. What we're talking about a lot of times is big nationwide popular elections, like the Democratic election, like the Zoran election, like the Kamala Harris presidential election. Like, you need to make these things known, make these ideas popular, make the nation contend with these ideas. And even if the candidate, let's say like the candidate doesn't get pushed over an iota, those leftist ideas like Medicare for all, being pro-trans, being anti-Israel, those ideas are going to be woven into the fabric of politics in this country, even if the candidates themselves didn't shift at all. And then maybe you can have more local elections where leftists win. Maybe that idea can come back stronger in the next election, and there's going to be more coalitions being built. And so then the Democrats are going to be forced to contend with more stronger leftist voting powers. Like, it is so silly to me that we're pretending like, oh, well, you're pushing for ideas and you don't think the candidate's going to change their position? Then why push for the idea? Why don't you just kill yourself? Like, are you, I don't know, like, are you, is your brain made out of just like a solid lump of meshed up paper? Like, do you understand how the world works? Like, you exist on YouTube. You talk about ideas for a living. You know how information is disseminated. The point is that you're getting people to be introduced to new ideas. You're getting people to be activated for politically more. And you're like, why would you push for something that you don't think would happen? What the fuck? Why would you? Oh yeah, no. You should just kill. Everyone should just kill themselves.
Was that supporting Gaza, supporting Israel was a losing proposition, and that no amount of warning signs would convince the Democratic Party that they should drop this issue or even pretend to drop the issue in the short term in order to win an election, and that the party fundamentally cared more about Israel than it did about beating Donald Trump. And how can you ask voters to care more about beating Donald Trump than a party who only really uses Trump as a cudgel to advance its corporate and imperialist interests?
I guess it seems to me, though, that, like, again, what the theory of change that you're suggesting is that presumably a fairly long-term project of bringing about the disintegration of the Democratic Party and the emergence of some kind of new left populist party. I mean, that's what you're suggesting, yeah?
100%. And just the same way as the Republican Party emerged because neither major American party was willing to.
I also think it's so silly when we're talking about like it's a long-term change. It's like Donald Trump came along, changed the entire Republican Party in like 2 years. That's what happened, okay? Like a popular leftist candidate can change the entire Democratic Party in like a year and a half. Like, it's such a long-term thing. Nah, not really. Not really. You just need some dramatic changes that happen, and then humans are pliable. They really are. And obviously Donald Trump didn't change the core of the Republican Party, which is we're going to take money from big donors, so it's a little bit easier to change the veneer of it and the way they present themselves as being more openly racist. But it can still happen when you have such an appetite for populist candidates in this country right now. That is a very strong power that people can tap into.
To acknowledge abolitionism as a movement. Right. Right. No one was willing to recognize the abolitionist movement. And so the Republicans emerged because there was half the country that was completely unseen within the political context.
But if that doesn't happen on a reasonable time frame, like if the Democratic Party does not disintegrate, then it seems that what you're advocating is, for us to essentially wind up with like a 50-year MAGA Reich, which...
Well, no, to be clear, the Democrats at any point could choose to win. Right? The Democrats at any point could choose to win. All they have to do is say, we're not going to support a genocide. Is that too much to ask?
I guess I'm not convinced that the Democrats will easily win if they simply say we're not going to support a genocide.
Why not? Because I'm looking at the poll now. It was 29%.
Donald Trump won perfectly well without making any such concession.
Au contraire, he said he supported a ceasefire. This is my point about how the right is willing to...
Fucking insane, dude. Not to mention that, like... what the fuck? Oh my god. He literally... It's so wrong on so many levels. Trump literally was saying that supported a ceasefire. He was anti-war. Trump also was courting the pro-peace voters, saying that vote for me. I'm gonna let it be a ceasefire. The Palestinians are gonna have a beautiful beachfront Trump property that I'm gonna build there for them. Then it's also like, oh, please fucking Christ, like this administration, even if Trump didn't say shit, which he did, the administration that is facilitating this genocide was Biden and Harris. And so the people, it makes sense. If you don't want a genocide, you vote for the people that aren't actively facilitating it. Oh my God. Second of all, like, just fuck, if you want votes that are anti-genocide votes, be anti-genocide. Not very hard.
Lie about it. And the Democrats won't even pretend to lie about it.
Wasn't Kamala Harris also at least nominally in favor of a ceasefire and a two-state solution?
No, she had to try. Well, the two-state solution is a whole other conversation. That is not really.
Oh, Kamala Harris was in favor of a two-state solution. Why is ContraPoints doing this interview? Why is she doing this interview? Genocide allegations, this rage-baited me out of my depression. You can see how rarely ContraPoints is challenged at all. Oh, God. Natalie is the kind of person who actually believes that the good cop will let her go free if she does whatever he says. That's a pretty good fucking comment. Brie casually crafted an absolute slaughter. Wow. But it will never work because of people like me. Why did ContraPoints do this interview? I think the Democrats would have more of a chance if they had much of an opinion on anything concrete. Fair enough.
The demand at present. But she had tried out AOC at the DNC after precluding any Palestinians, pro-Democrat Palestinians, from speaking at the DNC to argue that Kamala Harris was tirelessly fighting for a ceasefire when subsequent biographies, like the Kamala Harris's 107 Days biography and this Alex Thompson, Jake Tapper book, acknowledged that at no point, the reporting is clear, at no point did Joe Biden consider a ceasefire. At no point. And that was a bald-faced lie. Right? Which is part of why there's so much frustration with the sort of AOC left. Because here's where my argument continues. That when you do get progressives elected, and I was extremely enthusiastic about AOC. I was there the night reporting on her victory primary that nobody expected her to win. I was there her first day in office when she did the Green New Deal sit-in. And very hopeful about what was going to happen with her and the other electeds that were progressives that were elected in the years after. But in truth, the party changes you rather than the other way around. And this dovetails, sorry, I want to give you a chance to respond, but this dovetails with another, I think, criticism that you make of the left, which is that we don't, what is it, famously, you're famously quoted as saying, the left doesn't want power, the left wants to endlessly critique power. And this comes up in critiques of people like AOC and Zoran Mamdani once they get into office.
You know what? That's lazy critique. You know what that tells me? You don't want power. You don't want real change. You just want to sit back and critique the people that do want real change. Because you know what's the laziest thing possible? Just, criticizing people that criticize your friends. I think that's the laziest.
But we can come to that. I want to give you a chance to respond. I've said a lot.
Well, I still don't understand why you think that. Like, why does Donald Trump not have to do any of these things to get elected that you think that progressives would have to do?
Do what things?
Well, to, call for the end of Israel as a Jewish state or whatever, to...
By the way, I do think that should happen.
You have two different voting blocks too, right? Like, a lot of people didn't vote for Trump. They just didn't come out and vote for Kamala Harris.
That's me and my personal politics.
Yeah.
And I think there's a good reason for that, because the maintenance of a Jewish majority in the Arab world requires apartheid. It requires denying Palestinians the right to return. To create a democratic majority, you have to do exactly what Israel's been doing, which is genocide, ethnic cleansing, and apartheid. So that's my view. But to be clear, that is not what I think Kamala Harris had to do to win.
Okay, but so I guess I don't understand why, voters seem to have no trouble electing Donald Trump, this man who has an extremely pro-Israel position, more pro-Israel than the Democratic Party does. Like, why is he able to get elected without pivoting against Israel? Whereas, why is this a condition for the Democrats to succeed?
Well,
I feel like what you're saying would make more sense if Jill Stein had gotten 30% of the vote or something. I'd be like, well, okay, that's you have a point there. But that's not what happened, right? It's voters are supporting a further right, more pro-Israel candidate. So it's a little bit hard for me to reconcile with the idea that this is the reason why Democrats can't get elected.
I think for one, it's to punish Joe Biden, under whom this genocide started and under whom to date most of the deaths have occurred and most of the infrastructural destruction in Gaza has occurred, right? So it cannot go ignored that while you could anticipate that Donald Trump was going to do more of the same, and should have anticipated that Donald Trump was going to do more of the same, that doesn't justify, in the eyes of many voters, including voters whose lives and families have been directly implicated by this genocide, voting for the guy who did it. So if I'm standing there, stabbing you, I don't mean to like conjure violence, but if I'm standing there with a can of gas having burned your house down, and I'm like, vote for me and the other guy's going to burn your house down twice. I mean, you can imagine that you as an individual aren't going to want to vote for me. I just burned your house down.
So I can understand the psychology of that for when you're the person whose house is being burned down. But I also sort of don't really see. So I don't understand how like Biden's stance on Israel is being effectively punished by electing someone who's even more pro-Israel.
Well, people are saying you can't win. You're not going to be allowed to win under these conditions. If you want to win an election, Democratic Party, you have to move not even to the left, to the center, so where the majority of the country is and the majority of the world is on Israel. Because you understand, Natalie, that like in elections, there's a bunch of people who are always going to be Republicans, there are a bunch of people who are always going to be Democrats, and they're fighting for this center group of swing voters.
Yes.
And anti-war sentiments, along with a lot of other sentiments, many of which, frankly, I don't align with, are preponderant among that group, right? And that was a real driving force in the electorate. Among the people that you needed to get to change, Gaza, anti-war, I mean, Trump has been cultivating a sort of anti-war, anti-interventionist personality for a really long time, right? One of the things he bragged about was being a president that started no new wars. Now, you can sit here and you can argue with that,
right.
But like that was something, that was a pitch that he,
but he did say that, yes.
But that's a pitch that he made. So this is my point. You say that Trump didn't have to do the things that I'm saying that Biden or Kamala Harris should have done. But he did. And it was a lie, but he did do those things. He presented, he listened to the base and he gave them the message that they want to hear. While
Kamala also that the Democrats lied.
In what ways?
Well, in terms of like, I mean, you've suggested that the Democrats lied about wanting a ceasefire,
yes.
or lied about conditioning aid.
Yeah, I do. I think they lied less effectively, and I think they lied more minimally. I think when you have one guy lying and saying I'm going to end the war,
they should lie better.
Well, no, I think that they.
They should campaign on a message of peace. Yes, they. Oh, I caught you in a lie. You're saying they just need to lie better. Yeah, kind of. They need to campaign better.
Should tell the truth and cut ties with Israel. But if we're asking who's responsible, who had the power, who the onus was on to actually stop Trump, that clearly was not me or any podcaster or any voter or anybody tweeting on Al Gore's internet, Elon Musk's internet. It was the party who had the. And one last point I would make about this is, I'm sure you've been following what's going on with this DNC autopsy report. Have you?
Yes,
I'm sure people have lives.
I have. Yeah.
And I'm sure you've heard that the prevailing theory, which may not be true, but the prevailing theory is that the reason they don't want to, at least the autopsy report, is that it shows exactly what the IMEU study and other studies have shown, which is that the number one issue for Biden 2020 voters that didn't want to vote for Kamala in 2024 and didn't vote for Kamala in 2024 was ending Israel's violence in Gaza at 29%, followed by the economy, 24%, Medicare and Social Security at 12%, immigration at 11%, healthcare at 10%, and on down the line. So if they release that, the idea is, I'm sorry, just to put a fine point on it. The idea is that if the Democratic Party acknowledges and releases that they knew that was the case, then suddenly the onus is very clear, right? Who has the responsibility for losing to Trump is very clear. And the contrast that I think is my mission as a podcaster and a political commentator to demonstrate who the Democratic Party really is and what their priorities really are becomes very obvious to everyone. And I think you do start to get a lot of defections from the party, or at least calls for an enormous overhaul of leadership, et cetera.
Well, I want them to release the autopsy. I want them to do whatever it takes to get elected. If that means cutting off all aid to Israel, then they should do that. I mean, I think it probably, in reality, is likely wrapped up with a bunch of other issues, like the fact
getting the Democrats elected. It's so funny. Her priorities are so screwed up, right? If it means getting the Democrats elected, I'd be fine with them cutting off the aid to Israel, rather than I want the Democrats to get elected so that they can cut off the aid to Israel. Fine, I guess I guess we could cut off aid if it means getting Kamala Harris into the White House. Motherfucker, she just does not give a fuck about Palestinians at all. She does not give a single shit about anyone. I don't know, man. She brings up USAID, right? Hundreds of thousands of people are sick and or dying because of the USAID cuts. She doesn't give a fuck about that. If she cared about that, she'd bring up the genocide that Trump's doing. She'd bring up, the Iranians that they got bombed, that the Democrats are in favor of, by the way. She doesn't give a shit about any of this. The only thing she cares about is that she's personally close to the institutionalized power of establishment Dems, and she wants more of that power. She wants the establishment Dems to be in power so that she can be empowered. But, like an average person, I really want Democrats to get in power so we can end Israel's genocide. ContraPoints. I guess we could cut off funding if it means Democrats get in power.
Voters are upset about inflation or about like vague concerns about like maybe my child might encounter a transgender book in school, and the Democrats are supposed to do something.
That wasn't on the list, by the way. That isn't on this INEU list at the very least. Nothing.
Well, I hope it's not.
Nothing cultural. Abortion policy was number 9, and at 9%, and I don't know was 5%. But nothing about transports, nothing about COVID. A lot of issues that I think folks thought were going to be determinative weren't, at least among these Biden 2020 to Harris 2024 voters.
But can you see how it's like a little bit difficult for me to take your criticisms of what you think the Democrats ought to do to get elected when you're simultaneously saying that people should not elect them? Like your position is that people should divest from the Democratic Party. So because it's not in your interest for the Democrats to get elected based on your positions, right? You don't want them to win.
What do you mean?
Well, you don't want the Democrats to win, right?
I think in an ideal world, given how hard it's going to be.
She's getting so fucking angry over it. Well, you don't really want the Democrats to win. I want my politics represented by the people in power. That's what I want, okay?
And how hard it already is for so many people. In an ideal world, I worked for Bernie for this reason. In an ideal world, a social democrat like Bernie Sanders gets elected. We get universal health care, a basic social democrat safety net, free education, and our little capitalist kingdom gets to tip along for another 100 years and save a lot of people from immiseration. I think that's what I was working for, along with so many other people in 2020. But what I learned was how unlikely that is. What I learned from experience. Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I mean, your current position though is that people should divest from the Democratic Party. Isn't this sort of an energetic drain?
Bro, she's literally been advocating for people to work in electoralism using the two-party system this entire conversation. Did I miss the part where she's like, nah, people shouldn't vote Democrat? She's explaining why Kamala Harris didn't get votes. And then, ContraPoints is like, well, you explained why Kamala Harris didn't get votes. That means you're actually advocating for people to not vote for the Democrat Party. No, she's not, you motherfucker. She's saying that if the Dems want to win elections, they have to be anti-Israel. That's the fact of the matter.
Minimum on the enthusiasm that it takes to be able to win elections?
How so?
Well, it seems that you're using your platform to encourage people to abstain or to vote third party or to sort of in general just give up on the Democrats. Doesn't that, my experience is that in 2024 it was very difficult to advocate for Kamala Harris in public with a leftist audience because
no, it wasn't
of the extreme
genocide.
The genocide allegations. Yes, that you would the
genocide allegations. Ooh, puppy,
be accused of. I feel like I guess I don't see voting as a symbolic expression of my virtuous stance on any particular issue so much as I do a consequentialist calculation about what is the actual effect of this, and the actual effect of electing Donald Trump has been disastrous.
Yes, and
and the effect of letting Kamala Harris get in there would be okay, we did a genocide and it was fine. Honestly, yeah, Donald Trump, fucking horrible. The genocide's happening, but at least maybe because Kamala Harris lost the election, we can have one party in this country that is against genocide. Okay, maybe that could be the good effect of Kamala Harris not getting votes because of genocide. Maybe that could be a thing. I'm hoping, I'm begging. Natalie must have really thought this interview was going to be good PR for her.
Actual effect of voting blue no matter who means that we get more right-wing presidents every time, both on the Democratic side and on the Republican side.
Yep. Exactly. Oh, God damn fucking hell. Brianna's fucking sick, man. Brianna, I need to watch more of her shit because she's on point. I've seen some of her debate interviews that she's done. She's so good. Yeah, the end result of vote blue no matter who is you get a more conservative candidate on the right and left every single time. Unless you have a populist politician like Zoran who somehow survives. And let's just be honest, they were trying to rat fuck Zoran in the primary too. The entire media apparatus was anti-Zoran. Remember Stephen Colbert? Would you visit Israel? Do you think Israel has a right to exist, Zoran? Insane. Remember the debate moderators and Mr. Mamdani? You said that you wouldn't go anywhere, but would you visit Israel? Insane. The entire media was colluding to rat fuck Zoran. It just so happened that the candidate he was up against was so abysmally unpopular that he could barely limp into a general election, even having billionaires reanimating his decomposing corpse. Like Como was so fucking bad that Zoran was able to overcome it. Also, Zoran is a once-in-a-generation charismatic politician. So Zoran is an exception to the rule of the vote blue no matter who. Usually, when the media colludes and collaborates with the establishment and with Democratic establishment voters to pick a candidate, that candidate wins the primary. And then it becomes vote blue no matter who. You saw what happened when Zoran won the primary. All of the usual chorus of vote blue no matter who are suddenly, why do you ask Hakeem Jeffries to endorse Zoran? Why are you asking me if I endorse Zoran? Like, I don't know. Like, let's see what Cuomo has there. Like, let's have a real election and put Cuomo in the general too. Like, in the vast majority of cases, the vote blue, no matter who crowd, just want a more conservative candidate to win.
The only way to curb that ratchet effect would be to say, hey, Democrats, you absolutely can get my vote. My vote is absolutely gettable. And it's not because I'm asking for some crazy demand that's going to cause you to lose 3 other votes somewhere else. It's only upside. I have a plan for you, Democrats. Here's how you win. You oppose the genocide, you call it a genocide, and you say you're going to stop funding the genocide and follow American law, the Leahy law, which prohibits me from funding these war crimes to begin with. And you can win. How can you argue against that?
Because people have been making this argument my entire life. I mean, people argue about Ralph Nader in year 2000. Like
what
the argument that by voting third party, there's an opportunity to meaningfully shift the Democrats.
No, but that wasn't what I just said, right?
Move left. Well, what I just
said is, hey, I'm a Democrat. This is what I was advocating for Democrats. If you want to be me, great. But if you're a Democrat, my argument is to say, and this is what the uncommitted movement was saying, my vote is up on offer. I want to give you my vote. I want to stop Trump. I want to give you my vote. And all you have to do is do this thing, which is going to make you more popular and more electable. And the Democrats said, no, I would rather lose than incur the wrath of my AIPAC donors or whatever else is at the root of our entanglement with Israel as a country, our military base that is the state of Israel.
But in order for this blackmail message to be effective, doesn't it have to be the case that third-party voters are the determining factor in swinging the election, which you just said that they are not?
Not third-party voters. People who decline to vote for Kamala Harris are not third-party voters.
Do the protest voters have the leverage to be taking the election hostage in this way?
Well, they quite obviously did, and that's why they don't want to release, arguably, the autopsy report. Right? They quite obviously did. And if that becomes... Okay, sure. But what's not speculation is that we know that 29% of people who didn't vote for Kamala...
It's speculation. It's so silly. It's so silly because ContraPoints is wanting to have it both ways right now. She's both wanting to say, well, these votes didn't actually impact the election. But she also wants to say, you, Brianna Joy Gray, you are impacting the election because you told people to not vote for Kamala Harris because of the genocide. Right? You can't have it both ways. Either the votes impacted it or they didn't impact it. If they did impact it, then you have to admit that Brianna Joy Gray has more power than you care to say. And if they didn't impact it, then you have to shut the fuck up and stop complaining and just pick a better candidate at the end of the day. Right? It's either way, the onus is on you, my man.
Harris in 2024, but who did vote for Biden in 2020, said that ending Israel's violence in Gaza was the reason. Right? So if you're the Democrats and you have this option, a part of me wants to open one of these books and rifle through, because I remember at some point in, I can't remember if it's Original Sin or in 107 Days, I think it's Original Sin, there was reporting, and there's been ample reporting at this point, 2 years out, that internally, Biden understood, they understood how much this issue was hurting them. And they chose to ignore it. In fact, they chose to double down on it. right?
No.
And I don't understand, like, at some point, Natalie, like at some point, I mean, is there anything that Democrats would do that you would say, if Donald Trump, if the 2016 version of Donald Trump were running against the 2024 Donald Trump on the Democratic ticket, would you say that we should vote for 2016 Donald Trump because his first term was better than his second term?
Okay, I mean, so I joke about like how we would vote for Satan to stop Donald Trump. There probably is a line. I've yet not.
There probably is a lie. Okay. Like, what are we doing here? Genocide's not her. There's probably a line, but Palestinians getting bombed into oblivion. That's not the line for me. Then why are we listening to you? What? Like, what? Why are we listening? Like, why are you a voice that we should take seriously? That it's all. It really is, man. It just reeks of like she's up in her ivory tower and nothing really affects her. It would just be more convenient to her if her contacts in the Clinton organization, whatever, like the Clinton Foundation, had a little bit more juice to them. If they had a little bit, the numbers that she had saved in her phone had a little bit more weight to them. Ah, God. It's fucking gross. It's really gross.
Found it yet of like what like moral depth to which I would stoop to stop Donald Trump.
So what does that mean?
Yeah.
So play that out for me. Everyone always asking me to play out my plan. Play out the consequences of vote blue no matter who, because you and others, I don't mean to put it all on you, but ask me what the timeline is. I got to this place because I started asking more centrist oriented people what the timeline is for Medicare for all. How long are we supposed to deal with the fact that 68,000 people die every year from a lack of health insurance? What's the timeline on that? And I had people come to me who were Medicare for all activists in the state of California, who were Bernie's Medicare for all czar, and their plans were minimum 20-year time horizons, saying that, well, the argument that was made to me was Gavin Newsom was going to get Medicare for all in the state of California, that he was going to become president, and that he was then going to bring Medicare for all to the entire country. Gavin Newsom doesn't even support Medicare for all anymore, obviously. Mm-hmm. And the state of California, with its overwhelmingly Democratic legislature, has intentionally scuttled their CalCare program now multiple times, including just recently. So at a certain point, I mean, let me maybe ask it this way, Natalie. How much do you think that donor influence and corporate interests are determining the policies of the Democratic Party?
Well, they certainly have some effect. I think I maybe don't think they have quite the level of effect that you do, because yes, they have some effect, but they also, like, at the end of the day, do still need to get elected, right? So I don't think there's an infinite capacity for corporate influence. Like, there's a limit to how far you can push it where people will stop supporting you. This is kind of my point, that we saw that limit with Gaza and they didn't care, right? Like, Democrats have tried over the years to, like, I mean, Obama came fairly like with the Affordable Care Act, they came fairly close to getting not Medicare for all, but a single payer option.
Well, Natalie,
fairly close. No, but being shot down by Joe Lieberman.
Okay, but like, why is it, Natalie? We know how slim the Republicans' margins are right now, right?
Yeah.
And yet they managed to do everything in the world. Why is it that Barack Obama had a supermajority? When we say it was scuttled by Joe Lieberman, we're saying that he was the 60th vote in a supermajority. Yes. And why is it that it seems to be the case that Democrats are always 1 or 2 votes shy from doing the thing that 75% of the country wants them to do, but Republicans always manage to push through the thing that only 20% of the country wants them to do?
Well, do you really think that like Nancy Pelosi, for example, didn't want single payer? Like, I think that she did. Yes. Like, I think that this genuinely was. Don't. You don't think that she did?
I don't think that Democratic leadership, Nancy Pelosi, whomever, I don't think that Democratic Party leadership wants single payer. Absolutely not.
I don't think that's supported by Nancy Pelosi's actions in 2010.
How so?
I mean,
it's like we don't have single payer. I don't think either party wants it.
We'd have to fact check this after the fact, but I think we're making a fairly strong effort to achieve this, and eventually needing to create a compromise option in order to get Joe Lieberman on board. But I think that, look, I mean, I do think that in the future, like, Donald Trump has proved that by acting in a sort of heavy-handed authoritarian fashion, it is possible to do a bunch of stuff that's not popular. Should the Democrats? Well, I mean, I do consider it a serious defect of the Obama administration that he was so, like, there was this mindset of like, oh, we need to be bipartisan, and we need to constantly reach across the aisle. And like, yeah, I hate all of that. Obviously, I think a major lesson of the Obama administration was we do not go high. Don't do that. Like, and I think Biden improved on that somewhat. There's room for still more improvement. Well, I think Biden did a number of things that were not, would not have been doable if you needed Republican cooperation. But I think that,
I'm not trying to be contrarian. I just want to know specifically what you're thinking about.
Well, I'm thinking about like Medicaid expansion and infrastructure bill, and it was more aggressive in getting some of these things done than I think Obama was.
Okay. Sorry, guys. Sorry. What skill am I going with here? If any Slay the Spire players in here, speak up. I like BJG in this interview, and when she was on Rising before, I didn't like her support of delusional only true leftist Jimmy Dore. I really cannot get over how stupid she is or how much of a liar she is to say that she thinks that Pelosi wanted single payer. It's really bad. It's like she's downplaying the institutional advantages that establishment Democrats have at every single turn. The media colluded? Well, I don't think it really impacts it that much. You think that their donors don't want Medicare for all and a single payer system? Well, I mean, I think you're overestimating it. What skills do I have? Well, the only skill that I would enchant is probably taunt. 8 block off the top and giving vulnerable. That seems like a good start. But maybe turning bash into break is just better. That seems insane. 20 damage and 5 vulnerable. But luminescence is also so stupid. You don't play enough Slay the Spire. Luminescence is so good. But what is my deck doing anyway? It is good with Demon Form. Luminescence is pretty nice with Demon Form, I have to say. And Demon Form is fun. But Break seems sick. 20 damage, 5 vulnerable. Yeah, I don't know. The Luminescence is not, I think I'm off of the Electric Shrimp. The Archaic Tooth getting Break is cool, or Radiant Pearl. Luminescent. You know what? I think I'm going to go with this one.
So he was in the infrastructure bill example where he had the leverage comes from having the infrastructure project that Republicans want, and because it was COVID and the country was shut down and everyone needed the country to get going for capitalism reasons, right? So we took all of that stuff that even Republicans wanted to vote for, bundled it with a bunch of stuff that were Democratic priorities because they were social spending priorities, and then broke those two things apart so that Republicans could get what they wanted without having to do all the Democratic. That was the Build Back Better bifurcation dance that even AOC called out, right? AOC, there was that whole rigmarole around how they were going to hold the line and that they weren't going to vote for the one package unless both packages, and then predictably,
I agree with you that that there's a lot of room for a Democratic administration to be even more aggressive, and I agree that they should.
So why don't they? Why aren't they? Because people like me are often accused as being not having a material analysis, of thinking that we're going to win because of vibes. I feel very strongly that I'm doing the opposite. That when you just love Mamdani and love AOC, that's the vibes. I liked what they stood for and what they said, and now that they're in office, it's about asking, analyzing, and as someone who is in the media, pressing them on whether or not they're using the leverage that they have at their disposal to maximize the follow through on their campaign commitments, right? It's not about me loving them. My job is not to love Mamdani as much as he seems like a fun hang. I have nothing personal against any of these people, but I have to raise questions, right? Why does Zohran Mamdani endorse Kathy Hochul prematurely when she hasn't released fundraising, the funding to him that he needs to advance his agenda? Why does he come out and dissuade a challenger to Hakeem Jeffries when Hakeem Jeffries is one of the most vocal Zionists in the entire country? The leader of the Democratic Party bungled Democratic Party redistricting in New York in a way that cost Democrats seats in the House, and also did not support Zohran Mamdani's campaign even after he won the primary. Why did he say that he would vote for Hakeem Jeffries to be Speaker of the House prematurely, essentially without getting any concessions? If he has gotten concessions, why won't he be more forthcoming about what he was able to get with his leverage so people like me would leave him alone, right? These are questions I think it's incumbent on us to ask, because we want him to be successful on his campaign promises, not just successful in a person who has a job as a mayor who wants job stability. right? I'm not invested in
because
his
like once a
job
politician
stability.
gets elected, they have to like engage with the reality of their situation. They need to cooperate with other people to achieve things. Right?
Cooperate with
like,
who?
I don't think an elected politician cannot base all of their behavior around like winning the recognition from people who are protest voters and probably didn't support them in the first place.
Did you? What did I? Can you steel man back to me what I wanted Zoran Mamdani to do with Kathy Hochul and why?
I can't. No.
Okay, so I want to be really clear about this. I'll repeat it. I'm not just wanting him to run around saying I'm the biggest Marxist ever, beating his chest and saying free Palestine. That's not my argument. My argument is that he fought for free buses, free childcare, a number of policy priorities that were going to require funding from Albany, right, from the governor of the state. So when I raised concerns about him endorsing Kathy Hochul in her reelection bid during an election season, when there was her own lieutenant governor was challenging her, a lieutenant governor who came out and endorsed Zoran Mamdani early and who supported Zoran Mamdani's funding, when Kathy Hochul was saying she did not agree with his funding priorities, I see that as Zoran Mamdani prematurely giving up leverage for something that he says he wants, which is free buses. I'm with Zoran Mamdani. Let's get those free buses. But how are you going to get them when the governor of your state is saying that she doesn't believe in your policy agenda, and frankly also wouldn't even endorse you after you won your primary against an actual predator of Andrew Cuomo, right?
Yes.
So I feel like my ask is extremely pragmatic. How are you using your leverage to get money to do the thing that you say you want to do in New York?
I mean, I don't know the details of this.
Okay, to be honest, with this whole Zoran Mamdani thing, what does Brianna Joy Gray want? She wants him to explain to concerned leftists about the inner machinations of how he's dealing with Albany. Yeah, he's making concessions. He's helping some candidates win so that he can get his agenda across. I think this is fairly clear, and I think Brianna Joy Gray is being needlessly stubborn in this regard. I think that saying he promised free bus care and he's preemptively endorsing someone when he hasn't explained to the public how him endorsing someone is going to get Kathy Hochul to work more with him on achieving his budget concerns. Really, I don't know. I think this is fairly simple. He's endorsing someone, and behind the scenes, he's talking with Kathy Hochul. I don't know. Maybe that's just the faith I have in him, but it seems like that is just the way that politics work. You can be ideologically, you can be an ideological zealot and get nothing done, or you can make some concessions to try to get across the actual important parts of your budget and your platform that you came up on. I mean, yeah, him endorsing Hakeem Jeffries was fucking stupid. Also, who gives a fuck? Who cares? Who cares? He's trying to get his budget across. Guess what? I'd rather get an increase on taxes on the wealthy than Zoran not endorsing Hakeem Jeffries. I don't give a shit, and neither should you. Oh, Zoran endorsed Hakeem Jeffries. Wow. It turns out that Hakeem Jeffries still isn't a good politician.
Particular situation. That may be a valid criticism for all I know.
I mean, kind of the disconnect in that the Dems are hard to trust. She's wrong a lot. No, Brianna Joy Gray is based as hell, but she does have a little bit of that leftist, once we're in power, we don't know what to do syndrome. Which is fine. This is the difference between me and people I don't know, ContraPoints or whatever. It's I appreciate voices like Brianna Joy Gray that are Zoran's talking with Kathy Hochul. Zoran endorsed Hakeem Jeffries. I need to question his leftist bona fides. He's fine. Chill out. But I also don't care that Brianna Joy Gray is getting a little bit pissy about this. I appreciate leftists that are you know what? Fuck all of these people. Do I think they're perfect? No. But when we have an establishment that is so awful, it is healthy to be anti-establishment first and foremost. And any kind of kowtowing to the establishment she sees as a betrayal of leftist values. It's not. It's how you actually get leftist politics done. Zoran's trying to pass some of his platform planks, and he's doing that by bending a little bit and not being, endorsing the DSA candidates. He's working with the other levers of power so he can get his agenda across. This is how every politician ever works. It's not the most healthy thing to automatically be anti-establishment ever, because as I said earlier in this stream, there's going to be a point where you have real leftists in power, and when that day comes, where it is coming a little bit with Zoran, it's not good to be anti-establishment first and foremost. You actually have to have principles. You actually have to have values. I think that Brianna Joy Gray has those principles. She has those values. But whatever. It's just like, you know, you can. This is a conversation that can be had, and this is actually a really healthy conversation to be had, right? Should Zoran endorse Hakeem Jeffries? Should he endorse the DSA candidates? Like, he's doing some things to try to achieve other things. This is good politics. This is better shit than, should we kill trans people? Do they belong in a work camp? I'd rather have this conversation about Zoran's tactics on how to achieve free busing and an increase on taxes on the wealthy in New York City than you know, how many Palestinians should we murder today? How many bombs should we sell to Israel?
But it does seem like, I don't see, it's hard for me to see like what you're saying as pragmatic, when it seems like even the furthest left politicians that get elected in the United States, you sort of are not supporting because you see them as like immediately becoming compromised by this hopelessly corrupt system.
Not supporting? What does it mean to support? Is my job to support them, or is my job to get them to do my bidding because I'm the voter? I'm the constituent.
Well, did you support Zoran Mamdani in the election?
I did, and I had him on the show. I've had him on the show 4 or 5 times before most people even knew what his name was, right?
Yeah.
I supported him because he was doing things like doing a hunger strike in support of taxi drivers who are being financially immiserated by the cost of their medallions and killing themselves in New York City. But more importantly, I don't support Zoran Mamdani. I support what he ran on. My job is not to support some random 34-year-old man who seems really nice. My job is to support his agenda. And if he's acting in ways that don't seem to be in furtherance of his agenda, it's my job to ask why at the bare minimum, as someone who's ostensibly sort of in the media, in the press.
Well, and it's your right to ask that. But I do feel that like this is like we were talking about this kind of feud between people on the very far left of American politics, right? Where I mean, and you can sort of do this. You can do this when it comes to especially something like the mayor of New York City, where it's like, yeah, I mean, New York City is on the far left of the American political spectrum. But when it comes to like a national presidential election, like, this type of thing is like, so I don't know, don't you? I see this as like so far on the left end of the spectrum as to like sort of not be relevant to winning like median voters. So I feel like the focus on it is like a little bit.
To stay on this for a second though, Natalie, I think what was frustrating to me, like when I listened to you in conversation with Joshua Citarella, part of what's frustrating is there's this caricature of my position, right? There's this caricature of the left's position, which says we just want to beat up on Zoran and AOC, right? Like we just are running on vibes. We're never happy.
This is true. Like, there's a difference between what I was explaining and the idea that the leftists want to achieve nothing and they just want to complain, which is what ContraPoints says leftists do.
We don't want power. We want to endlessly critique power.
Yes.
And my view of it is we fought tooth and nail to get these people into power. And when they are in power, we would like them to use it. And I choose not to speak about liberals in this way because I don't know how constructive it is. And so many of them are kind of organically coming around to my position because of what they see the Democratic Party doing and not fighting and not being a resistance party. But I could easily characterize liberals as being exactly what you claim the left is, which is not caring about power, right? Because Zoran and them, they have power, but only caring about kind of abstractly sitting in those seats without actually wielding power. And that to me, it's very frustrating because we should be on the same side, but I think there was this cartoonish caricature and an attempt to drain the substance out of the critique of the left that has us at cross purposes where I don't actually know that you disagree. Like when I outlined the specific critique of Zoran, it doesn't sound like you disagree with it. So is there something else that I'm missing here that's your critique of the left?
Well, so I think when you're critiquing specific things that Mamdani does or that Biden did, or that like yes, of course it's within reason to criticize your elected officials, and we all ought to do that. I agree, but I also think that what my frustration with the left is more that when it comes time to actually elect, the energy is so oppositional to like it's very difficult to build the kind of like momentum behind a candidate when it's so much. I don't see this problem existing on the right where like you don't have I mean obviously Trump has lost a lot of his I think supporters in the last.
I got free buzzing. all the time. It wasn't that good.
Year, but like during the election, they show up for him and they form this kind of like unified like, and some of this has to do with right-wing values around loyalty and submission and stuff. And I don't necessarily advocate adopting that, but I do think that
this is bullshit, by the way. Like, the right is infighting all the time. And as we speak, it's going through a massive, like, civil unrest like, within the party. As people realize that, okay, like, Trump is increasingly unpopular with independents, this party is doomed. This party's never going to win elections again.
I mean, again, like you don't even support Kamala Harris during the election. It's not like you say like, okay, well, we'll get her elected and then we criticize. It's that when you're not even you don't even want to get her elected, then it's
because I have so much
that's where I see the criticism as being this like critiquing power thing.
Okay,
because it's like you don't.
Yeah.
You're
so
not.
Let's talk about power. Let's talk about leverage.
Yeah. Okay.
Do I have more leverage against Kamala Harris before she's elected or once she's president for 4 years?
Well, in the same, I mean, I see what you're saying, like as like a protest voter threat, but I don't know. Do the Democrats take that threat seriously, or is it like is it tendency to instead? Because I feel like this
is where I keep getting back to.
I feel like a lot of Democrats feel that when the protest voters are sort of unwinnable, are sort of like never happy, right? Whereas there are like centrist median voters that are more winnable, right? And that's, I think,
how has that been panning out?
And it tends to be the reaction to losing an election.
And
right?
how is that panning out? Who are these centrist voters? So this is you're completely right. This is the Democrats' belief. They believe that if they take Liz Cheney, the daughter of the architect of the Iraq War, to Dearborn, Michigan, America's largest Muslim population, and parade her around on the stage, that they are going to find some voter, some Midwestern war-loving voter who is so in love with Liz Cheney, a woman who lost her seat because she wouldn't subscribe to Trumpism, and that's somehow going to gin up votes for her, right? Like you're completely right. The Democrat, but this is where I would disagree with you. This is where I would just modify that a little bit. I don't think that the Democratic Party necessarily believes that there are more voters to be gotten in this like weird, socially liberal, economically conservative middle ground of people that I don't think really, exist in any big numbers. But I do think that they are fundamentally unwilling to go the economic populist route because their donors won't allow it. And you keep asking me, which is a really good question, which is why does it seem to be so much easier for Republicans? And I think I would answer that in two ways. One, because Donald Trump is in fact throwing meat to his base. He's saying we're going to go after immigrants. They're the wrong kind of people. He's saying I'm going to be an anti-war candidate. It's a lie, but he's saying all of that stuff. And that's what his base wants to hear. I cannot fathom what the Kamala Harris or Joe Biden equivalent of that was. What did Kamala Harris run on?
I mean, a lot of the messaging was very pro-democracy. Like,
okay,
I think,
so anti-Trump.
I think, yes, it was anti-Trump, which I think evidently it did not work. I mean, I think it appeals to someone like me who's concerned, like who's like deeply bothered by Trump and by January 6th.
Well, it appeals to people who are already going to vote Democrat no matter who.
But
so
it doesn't, it's not a
matter.
issue. I agree.
Right, so it's fundamentally...
that should probably not be the focus.
It's a waste of, it's a waste of everybody's time because the people who that appeals to are going to vote Democrat no matter what. No matter what. So who do you actually need to get? You need to get me. You need to get the Muslims in Dearborn.
But like,
you need to get some
gettable?
I mean, me personally, it's like I don't think that it's useful to talk about me because I live in Washington D.C. because I am someone. Right, but I just mean the royal me.
Oh my God, so royal, bro.
What you needed to get was the millions of voters that voted for Joe Biden in 2020 that declined to vote for Kamala Harris in 2024, and who said the number one reason they did so was the war in Gaza.
Yeah,
that's what you need to get.
Like I feel that the 2028 primary will decide this. Like, but I also think that again, just like looking at the history of Democrats losing elections, like usually when the Democrats lose a presidential election, the next candidate is further to the right and not further to the left.
Yes.
Right. And that after 12 years of Reaganism, you got Bill Clinton.
And why is that?
Why is that? When Gore lost in 2000, you got John Kerry. When Bernie Sanders lost in when Hillary Clinton lost in 2016, you got Joe Biden. I mean, why is that? I think it's because the Democrats pivot to attracting centrist voters.
Right. And why do we allow them to do that when it repeatedly causes them to lose?
But it doesn't cause them to lose. Like Bill Clinton.
Did Hillary Clinton win?
No, Hillary Clinton didn't win, but Hillary Clinton was coming after 8 years of Obama.
Exactly. And Bill Clinton won because he came after 8 years of Reagan. Right? Yeah. Like a friend of mine said this once. I think it was Pete David. It was someone over at Current Affairs who said this to me once. Maybe it was even Nathan. That the candidate that wins every year, they characterize it as the most Jesus-like candidate. I would characterize it as the most like outsider sort of Messiah-y candidate. As the person who is able to frame themselves as the biggest outsider wins.
I mean,
right?
Yeah, if I agree that for the last like 20 or 30 years, like there is a tendency, there's like an anti-incumbent bias.
Right.
Where like the people want a change, and so they vote for the other party.
Right. So the problem is that phenomenon gets confused with the sort of electoral viability of centrism. So Bill Clinton wins doing third way triangulation, basically running as a Republican who is from the South and pretends to be a black person because he's, plays the saxophone or whatever. And that gets interpreted as third way neoliberal triangulation works. And the Democrats have been doing that for the last 40 years.
Didn't it work?
Well, no, because what we just described was that after 8 years of one, we're going to get the other. That the person who there's a kind of incumbency disadvantage when it's one party has been empowered for a long time is blamed for everything that's going wrong in the world. And so whoever is on the other side is going to win. Like, we just agreed that that's the case, right? We just agreed that that's a phenomenon. And the problem,
I don't think it's like inevitable, but I think it's a tendency.
It's not necessary. I mean, sure, but we just both agreed, did we not, that that's been the case for basically the last 40 years.
Yeah.
So that being said, it feels like what it seems like is the same people who elected Bill Clinton are still advising the Democratic Party. You got James Carville still on TV saying the same thing he's been saying since then, no matter how many times he's been proven wrong, no matter how many times Hillary loses Obama and then Hillary loses to Donald Trump. Joe Biden, I would argue, narrowly wins in 2020 largely because of COVID and people's lack of faith that Donald Trump can manage this global crisis. And people feeling really endangered and their health is on the line and they just need someone normal and sensible back in the White House. And then you get a Joe Biden. And then you see how fragile that coalition around Joe Biden was 4 years later. Right?
Yes. Well, but so you seem to think that the solution to this is to like for if the Democrats pivot to the far left, that there's this like available
the far left
base. Well, by
is
Democratic
not supporting
Party
a genocide as far left
by Democratic Party standards.
Well, isn't that quite the admission?
Well,
isn't that quite the admission that we have a far right Democratic Party if something like ending a genocide is considered to be far left?
Well, I don't think necessarily that particular issue, but so
Medicare for all, raising the minimum wage.
I don't know. To be clear, I don't necessarily think any of that is far left, right? But like,
it's populist. It's centrist.
She just said ending genocide is far left.
Politics.
Yeah, but your position seems to be that like there's this sort of like available untapped voter base that will manifest if the Democrats, run on these issues. But why doesn't that voter base manifest in the primaries? I guess is my question.
Well, you refuse to acknowledge the riggedness of the primaries.
Yeah.
You refuse to. So I don't know what to tell you.
That the primaries are rigged, but I just feel
it's not my position.
The primary, first of all, we didn't have a fucking primary in 2024. And to the extent that we did have a primary, the only candidate was Joe Biden. And people were like voting uncommitted to resist Joe Biden. So yes, it was rigged. And even though it was rigged, this sentiment of an anti-incumbency, anti-genocide voter base still came through. And is it our fault that the Democratic establishment just decided like, fuck it, like who cares? Oh, people let their dismay, their unhappiness with our pro-genocide platform known. People let their dismay with that platform be known. Just forget about it. Just be pro-genocide anyway. Maybe we'll win. Who cares? Like we also have to realize that the Democrats don't really care about winning. At the end of the day, they are a pro-Israel party, and so the politicians that lose, like Kamala Harris lost her election, she's fine. The campaign strategists that lost Kamala Harris's election, they're still strategizing campaigns. They're the ones that are refusing to release the election autopsy. Like, the party doesn't really care. The establishment doesn't really care if their candidate loses, as long as their donors are still happy with the effort.
It's the people who rigged the primaries position. They're openly admitting it at this point, Natalie.
I feel the argument that the primaries are rigged is like, I feel like the evidence does not rise to the level where I feel like rigged is an appropriate description for what happened.
Well, how would you like? Frankly, I use the phrase finger on the scale when I first brought this up in our conversation.
Yeah.
Oh, so I don't need to use the term. I mean, if that is just a semantic issue, then we don't have to use that word.
Like, okay, so like again, to go back to 2020, like, okay, so there's a sort of minor conspiracy of like of center left candidates dropping out so that Joe Biden gets all of the voters available to that. That strategy simply would not work if the more progressive candidate Bernie Sanders had. If there were just simply more voters for the progressive candidate than there were for the center left candidate, but that turned out not to be the case.
Yeah, I think, I mean, there's a few things that happen. As you are aware, many fewer people vote in primaries than in general elections, and it tends to be more plugged in, conventional media, mainstream media watching folks who are tuned into their MSNBC every day, and exactly the people who are getting the overwhelming message that someone like Bernie Sanders is not electable, which we know not to be true.
But this,
I mean, in terms of the head-to-head polls,
this is a problem that ought to be solvable by generating energy to vote for more progressive candidates in primaries,
okay,
right?
now we're talking about the same thing.
If it's like Kamala Harris's fault that she lost in 2024, then isn't it also kind of Bernie Sanders' fault that he lost in 2020?
What do you mean? How do you mean?
Well, by failing to generate the energy or to
Yeah, but the point is that it's like, dude, this is so fucking stupid. The point is that it's an unnatural environment, right? If we're saying we want to have the most electable Democrat go into the general election, you don't get the most electable Democrat by rigging the primary. That's the point. Because you can't rig the general the same way you can the primary. You don't have the same control over the independent voters that are not going to be voting the primary. You don't have the same control of media, of candidates pooling their voting bases together so that they can select the most establishment perfect Democrat like Joe Biden or Hillary Clinton. Like the Democratic establishment does not have the same control over the general election as they do over the primary election. And so when you rig the primary election to pick the preferred candidate and override the will of the voters, you are setting yourself up for failure. So the logic does not follow that, Kamala Harris should have just campaigned better. Because it's the Democratic Party as a whole is setting itself up for failure when they collude against the more electable candidate. And we see that happening time and time and time and time again. And then the only response that we get from them is, we'll vote blue no matter who. And even though we chose the less electable candidate because we colluded against the more popular person, you just have to suck it up. And if the candidate that we pre-selected loses, it's actually your fault. No, this is a total false equivalency that ContraPoints is trying to put up right here.
Well, yes, but here's the problem. Here's the problem.
Campaign in South Carolina or whatever we think is the condition that Bernie would have to meet to win.
The problem of how to overcome the media, and I don't want to overstate, I really want to say like $70 million worth of earned media that came out of Biden's South Carolina win. Like Bernie fundraised everybody in the race, but there's only so much you can do about the entire media infrastructure, hailing Joe Biden as the king of the blacks and the ultimate winner of the election after winning one southern state that's a red state that actually has.
Yep, that's true. That happened.
No bearing on the outcome of the general election, right? What to do about that is a huge problem that dovetails with our enormous media capture problem that we're dealing with right now with respect to Israel and Gaza. I will say that Israel and Gaza is demonstrating that despite the overwhelming control of the media by these corporate interests that are now explicitly owned by Zionists in too many outlets, in too many forms than I could count, that it hasn't managed to keep a grip on public opinion. So it's a really interesting thing that we're seeing right now, that for the first time, there's some kind of messaging that has overcome the media. That being said, it's going to be a longer term struggle for folks like Bernie Sanders working within the Democratic Party, especially to figure out how not just to overcome the party's messaging, but the fact that they will never be able to be seen. I mean, right now, Natalie, you have a Green Party candidate for governor. It's a first to past the post system, right? So it's not like a spoiler argument. It's a jungle primary. You had all the Democrats, the top 3 Democrats before Swalwell dropped out, polling at 10%. You had the Green Party candidate polling at 5%, and the Democratic Party sued to get him off the ballot because God forbid he actually participate in a debate. And the people of California, ostensibly our most liberal state who would be open to something like this, actually hear someone who supports Medicare for all in Gaza. But they simply undemocratically sue to get you off the ballot to preclude Americans from even finding out about you. I heard you tell Joshua Citarella that you think there's something kind of masculine and sort of like man-coded about the antipathy toward the Democrats and people like Hillary Clinton, and the kind of drive to be contrarian and vote green and what have you, which as one of the country's most famously hated Green Party voters, I took some issue to that, especially since I voted for very much a woman, Jill Stein, twice now, right? And Nina Turner is also a famously hated Green Party voter, and Susan Sarandon is a famously hated Green Party voter.
No, I think that the Green Party is also somewhat feminine coded. I would agree with that because even the concept of a Green Party as being sort of initially like an environmentalist party, environmentalism is a feminine coded issue, right? So that's not necessarily what I was talking about. I guess, sorry, I still am tempted to bring this around because it does seem like,
holy shit,
so it seems like when a center-left candidate like Kamala Harris loses a general election, you seem to place all the blame for it on them. When a more progressive candidate like Bernie Sanders loses a primary, you blame the media. I mean, like why is it not also sort of Bernie Sanders' fault for not,
Well, I think I did.
Why is it not also sort of the
say,
media's fault for Kamala? Because I mean, the media did also obsessively focus on Joe Biden's health. Like, there's all kinds of things that you could say about.
Okay, a couple of things. It's different when the media lies versus when the media tells the truth. And what the media, in fact, did with Joe Biden is run cover for him when he was in a clear state of decline going back to 2019, right? So if anything, the media
there's fairly extensive media coverage of Biden's declining health in the years up to 2024.
I am not one to want to promote Jake Tapper in any way, shape, or form, but co-written by my neighbor at the wall behind me, Alex Thompson, there's an entire book about the media cover-up of Joe Biden's senility. And I remember covering this on Rising. It was very frustrating that every time that Joe Biden did something that was obviously reflective of his lapsing competence, mixing up the names of foreign leaders, walking out the wrong door, tripping all over the place, having these falls, that it was attributed to being a right-wing conspiracy theory. That was the actual language used, that you were using. You were dealing with right-wing conspiracy theory.
In the Democratic Party, right?
Yeah, in Democratic media with Democratic figures on Democratic media talking about Biden's senility. And in fact, going back to 2019, I'm sorry, listeners to the show, you've heard me say this a million times, but on the debate stage, rising stars Cory Booker and Julian Castro had the temerity to point out that Joe Biden seemed not to remember what he had just been talking about on the debate stage in 2019. And when they called that out, Castro called it out on stage, and then they both said something about it in the spin room afterward. You didn't hear from either of them for another 4 years. And I still haven't heard from Castro. I don't know where he's, and these were rising stars in the Democratic Party. These were going to be our Gen X presidents.
Yeah.
And now we're skipping them.
Well,
you get punished, as they deserved. I mean, like, I'm not sitting here obviously rooting for Cory Booker or anything, but I mean, the fact that the Democratic Party would sideline, and this is conjecture here, this is just my observation, but seemingly that there would be more consequences for calling out Joe Biden's senility at a time when it could have been avoided as a consequence for the party than there is for actually being the senile person who puts America in the position of a second Donald Trump term, strikes me as a little backward, no?
Well, I agree with you that a lot of blame for this does rest with the Democrats. Like, I am not conspiracist about why Democrats lose elections. Like, I don't think there is a conspiracy necessarily against Joe Biden. I mean, I mean, but it seems like it does seem like that's a little bit what you're saying when it comes to discussing like why Bernie Sanders can't win a Democratic primary.
No.
Like,
let's be clear. I don't think that Bernie can't win, and I think
there was a conspiracy. What are we talking? There literally was a conspiracy against Joe Biden. Like, there was first of all a conspiracy to get him the nomination, and then there was a conspiracy to get him to drop out. What are we gaining by burying our head in the sand and pretending like the Democratic Party has no control about who the Democratic nominee is? It's strange to me that this is what we're pretending to do.
That he should have anticipated what was going to happen, that there was going to be coordination. That was something that was anticipated, that they were going to try to leverage the black vote against him and use South Carolina the way they did. All of that should have been anticipated. But it is also fair to acknowledge that is an extremely, anticipated all day and night. And it's an extremely high barrier that he had to overcome, that a candidate that was not a threat to the healthcare industry, the private insurance industry, the weapons manufacturing industry, the oil and gas industry, et cetera, would not have had to face.
On some level, I think that's true. On some level, some of it also just simply the product of like Bernie Sanders having been a party, like an outsider to the party, having been an independent in Vermont. I mean, I just think that like there's a limit to how much of this you can attribute to that when like it is ultimately the popular vote that he is unable to win. I mean, you can blame it on media bias to a certain extent, perhaps, but
that's the whole point of the quote unquote rigging of the first election. That it's not the popular vote, that the delegate counts were rigged, that he won every county in West Virginia and didn't get any of those delegates. I mean, that's what we're talking about when we're talking about the rigging. That it was not a popular vote issue. And moreover, if we wanted popular vote Democratic reforms, you would do things like support ranked choice voting so that the spoiler candidate issue that frequently causes people not to vote for someone like Bernie because they think he's quote unquote unelectable would no longer be at play.
Well,
but Democrats oppose ranked choice voting. Yeah. And when it's passed by ballot measure, I think in Maine it was passed some years back, Democrats work to overturn it against the popular will because they know that it's a threat to vote blue no matter who, which is the only way they ever get any support, given that they won't support popular policies.
I mean, I support ranked choice voting. I mean, I would love to get rid of this predicament that we're in, right?
Damn,
but
she's
like,
so base.
I just, at the end of the day, we're having like a debate between the losers, and we're stuck with Donald Trump. I mean,
well, I don't see us as being at the end of history. We're not at the end of history, but I think, frankly, it's funny that like the left gets characterized as like nihilistic. You've characterized yourself as nihilistic or despondent, or both here and in your recent chat with Joshua Citarella. And every time you said that, I would kind of smile because, you know, I don't see myself that way. And in fact, you know, you are kind of claiming the term pragmatism. I see myself as a pragmatist. I see myself as a pragmatist insofar as not kicking Lucy's football again is the pragmatic choice. And you could say to me, well, how do you know there's another football to kick? Well, I don't. Truthfully, I don't. But I know that Lucy is going to pull it.
How is voting for third party not its own kind of kicking Lucy's football again? Like, again, like if since like Ralph Nader and Y2K, like voting third party has sort of failed to shift the Democratic Party to left. It's failed to and disintegrate the Democratic Party.
Here's why.
Certainly failed to elect anyone. Right.
Here's why. I hear you asking that question, and I have not responded to it. I haven't responded to it as specifically as I should have. So let me do that. It is not enough to simply divest from the Democratic Party or to vote third party and to not frame the reason as why. To stay home. That's not sufficient. Here's why. Democrats, part of the Democratic Party propaganda is to characterize non-voters and Green Party voters in such a way as to insulate themselves from having to be responsive to those voters and moving in the direction of those voters and get away from the direction of their donor base, right? So this is the whole thing we're talking about with uncommitted and the obviousness of the role of Gaza and why they won't release probably the DNC autopsy report. But this has been the case since a long time before Gaza. If the public were to wake up to the fact that elections are winnable, and in fact are winnable by FDR numbers where you're winning every single state by Democrats, but that the Democrats are declining to do so, that's a crisis for the credibility of the party as a whole, right? So what they do historically is to say they vilify Green Party voters, they say Jill Stein's a Putinist, they vilify national heroes like Ralph Nader, who saved so many lives with his consumer advocacy around the seatbelt and car safety and all of those kinds of things. They make these people into a pariah. You get people like Mehdi Hassan and like I remember Samantha Bee in 2016, a week out from the election, doing weird screeds against Green Party. AOC did it this last time around. Weird, unasked for screeds against to smear Green Partiers, as opposed to trying to win votes and talking about why Kamala was actually good.
And this is why, aren't you just describing campaigning? Like doing hits against your electoral opponents is part of campaigning, right? And like you certainly do hits against more mainstream Democrats, right?
No, I think campaigning is more than that. Talking about why you're elected.
It is more than that.
This came up in your
to argue why your opponents.
This came up in your conversation with
better choice
with Joshua, and I think it was really interesting because you were talking about like the right wing online influence machine versus the left influence machine, and like why does the right have more influence? Why are they more persuasive? And you've brought up in this conversation a couple of times like why is Trump more persuasive? And how like you have been doing counter programming for all of these years, right? But that you are sort of. And you're increasingly pessimistic about sort of the reach of that counter programming because a lie goes around the world twice before the truth gets out of the door, or whatever. There was a word, a name that you used to describe this phenomenon, started with a B that I can't remember.
Brandolini's law.
Brandolini's law. Okay, right, because of Brandolini's law.
It takes like 10 times the effort to debunk bullshit than it does to generate it.
Exactly. And I was listening to that part of the conversation with interest because my belief, and that's just my belief, is that is true. But that the way you counter the OG programming is with your own OG programming. You have to change the conversation and shift it to territory that is more advantageous to you. So I agree with you that the Democrats are sort of fighting an uphill battle when they say, no, really, I'm the better candidate on immigration because you're fighting immigration is the right issue and the rights issue, and they are trusted more on immigration than Democrats. Same with trans issues, saying, no, actually, I'm going to throw trans people under the bus. One, it's immoral. Two, no one's going to believe you. So like, why even play in that sandbox? What you have to do is redefine the conversation around things that people care about even more than whether one of 5 trans, middle schoolers gets to play on the girls' soccer team. You have to talk about something like, I don't know, Medicare for all, which is an overwhelmingly popular issue, right? And so I think that all of this stuff in the electability is dovetailing together. It's Democrats are playing in these cultural sandboxes where they're going to lose precisely. They know that they're kind of losing on trans stuff. They know that they're not going to convince anybody that they're better on, quote unquote, better on immigration than Republicans, but they won't take the easy layup that's right there. And why? Why, Natalie, would a Democratic candidate, knowing that Medicare for all is an 88% issue with Democratic voters and a 49% issue with Republican voters and a 60-something% issue with independents, not run hard on the most popular issue in America years after a global pandemic? Why not?
Well, because, if it's such a slam dunk, I just don't understand why. I just can't keep going back to why does Bernie Sanders not win Democratic primaries?
But that's not even the right question. question, Natalie. The question is, why did Bernie Sanders manage to come out of an obscurity and be a front runner in 2 back-to-back elections in the first place? The miracle,
I agree.
the evidence is not that he lost. The miracle is that he almost won. And frankly, the miracle is that he managed to out-fundraise every other person in the race, even though they were taking money from billionaires.
But why is that a miracle if there's such like widespread popular support?
Because, well, it's not a miracle. It's evidence of the popular support is what I'm trying to argue. It's evidence of the fact that there is, in fact, this unwhetted appetite.
She's incapable of answering the question of like, why aren't the Democrats running on popular issues that would help people's material conditions and make their lives easier? And the answer is that, the Democrats are run by the same forces that the Republicans are run by. Namely, they don't really give a fuck about helping the people as long as, and their first and foremost point of concern is helping their donors. That's what they're concerned about doing. And I don't know. It's like she's surprised at this, I guess.
Appealed to popular population of people who are waiting for someone they can vote affirmatively for instead of just hold their nose for. And the Democrats are saying, absolutely not. We will do anything and everything in our power to make sure someone like Bernie doesn't win. And that's why I'm not especially sanguine about the primary prospects in 2028, though I hope to be proven wrong.
Well, we'll see. I guess again, like a lot of what you're saying are things that I think are like are completely within the realm of like reasonable debate to be had about like what democratic strategy ought to be. I guess it's just a little bit difficult for me to take when it comes from someone who does not support the Democrats in the elections anyway.
Well, really? I'm not the only one making this argument. Chris Hedges makes this argument. Cornel West makes this argument.
Right.
Hassan Piker is increasingly making this argument, although he's still, for the most part, pretty down with for Democratic candidates.
Many of these people are sort of abandoned Harris people, right? I guess again, I think these are like they're reasonable arguments to be had here, but I just think that it feels like slightly disingenuous to me to be being like, oh, here's what Democrats have to do to win. Here's what Democrats have to do to win, when also spending at the same time a bunch of effort on making sure that Democrats don't win to whatever.
No, Democrats could put egg on my face tomorrow. I dare Democrats humiliate me, embarrass me, prove me wrong, destroy my priors, make me look like the biggest fool and the wrongest person in the world by getting behind a populist left candidate in 2028.
Don't tempt them.
Well, we'll
prove
see.
me wrong.
We'll see. It's up to primary voters. It just is.
I would love to. It's not. Unfortunately, it's not. Because by your own admission, we haven't had a primary in at least 8 years. And I would argue, since
2020. We had a primary in 2020.
All right.
We did. I'm sorry, we did. You're in denial about this.
Okay, that was 6 years ago. So in at least 6 years.
Yes, I agree. I'm well, and I agree that 2024 was a catastrophe in a number of ways. I do think it would have been better with a primary.
So just to be clear, Natalie, you think it's normal? You think it's like when Joe Biden doesn't win Iowa, he comes like 4th or 5th in New Hampshire, he loses Nevada, like 3rd or 4th place. And Bernie wins arguably all of those, although the Iowa contested, blah, blah, blah. You think that it is, and then Biden wins one state. Others have been doing better than, everyone's been doing better than Biden. He wins one state. It's a red state that has absolutely no bearing on his electability writ large. And the media hails him as the inevitable winner. And subsequently, all of the candidates who had been performing better than him up until that point in those 3 subsequent primaries drop out. That doesn't strike you as a sort of coordinated prioritization of the Democratic Party of stopping Bernie?
Could you be specific about what it is that you're implying?
I'm saying very expressly in a way that has been reported.
Can you be? She literally just said a coordinated attempt to exclude Bernie from the nomination. Can you be more specific than that?
Out, and it's not even conjecture at this time, that the Democratic Party decided, Barack Obama picked up a phone, told everybody else to drop out of the race and coalesce behind Biden to stop Bernie from winning. This is like at this point, this is so far from the realm of conspiracy theory.
The strategy would not work if Bernie had the capacity to win over a center-left candidate without that vote being split.
I agree, but that's not the.
It's so stupid. It's like the Democrats colluded to make Bernie Sanders lose the nomination. Yes, they did. But that strategy wouldn't have worked if he was popular enough to overcome that collusion. Checkmate, leftist. What do you have to say there? It's like, the That's true. He was not able to overcome the collusion. And let's take a look at what happens when the candidate is unable to overcome the collusion. Oh, Hillary Clinton lost to Donald Trump. Interesting. Joe Biden barely beat Donald Trump, was aided by a global pandemic. Kamala Harris lost to Donald Trump. Wow, interesting. Maybe all of these collusions to keep Bernie Sanders out and to avoid any kind of primary isn't healthy for the party. Oh, what happened when the popularly elected candidate did overcome the Democratic primary collusion to beat them? Zohar Mamdani won in a fucking landslide. Wow. Wow, interesting. Okay. So maybe what we're arguing is that the Democratic establishment using their levers of power in the media apparatus to usurp the popular will of the people and instead put heavy pressure on their preferred candidate isn't healthy for the party if they want to win elections, and as a result isn't healthy for the country, because the policies that would help the most amount of people, which are the most popular policies right now, aren't being represented by the Democrats' preferred chosen candidate. Because the people's preferred chosen candidate is getting usurped by the will of the Democratic establishment. Oh, God, okay. But did you realize that he lost the election anyway, so checkmate?
Exact question that I'm asking. Now we're litigating the quote-unquote riggedness of the primary.
Yes, that we are.
Right, because we're in this little bit of a conversation about how long has it been since we've had a real primary where because you're saying that the voters get to decide, that the primary voters
I think that's a real primary. I mean, like,
okay.
Again, candidates are entitled to maneuver and try to drop out into, it's fairly normal behavior for rival candidates to at some point drop out and support. I mean, again, candidates who are more aligned will tend to.
So candidates that are doing better than their other candidates to drop out and support a poorer performing candidate. You think that's a regular course of action? It's like a normal thing.
Why do you think that
in a democracy?
Why do you think that candidates who?
Oh, did you see that combat? That combat was sick.
Doing better would drop out if they didn't think that Biden had a better.
They're promised the Secretary of Transportation.
Okay, but
and they got it.
But Biden did win, right?
And they're promised support from the Democratic Party when they run for election in the next cycle, which Pete Buttigieg
clinging on. Bro, imagine being a liberal. Imagine being a liberal and clinging on to the idea of, when everyone backstabbed Bernie Sanders and colluded to support Joe Biden, he did win. He did win. Okay. Yeah, imagine clinging on to Biden's 2020 election win, where he barely scraped his limping ass over the finish line because with an entire global pandemic boosting him in the polls, and being like, well, Biden won. That means that the all of the campaign strategists know what they're talking about. We can have faith in the DNC. Holy shit, dude! I couldn't catch me doing that.
Will get.
Sure.
He's going to be the chosen one because he played ball. Just like I just interviewed a congressional candidate who's running against Richie Torres, who says that one of the big Democratic donors came up to him and said exactly that you're very promising. We'll support you in an election down the line, but can you drop out so we can coalesce behind the moderate candidate in this race? This is
what is so you're saying this is not all kinds of maneuvering goes on in any kind of election, but you're saying this is not a real primary. I mean, what to you is that a real primary? What does a real primary look like?
Is that a democratic choice being made by the electorate? A transparent democratic choice that is being presented to the electorate? Or is it a skewed choice?
It's so stupid. This conversation is asinine. It's like, oh, all types of democratic maneuverings are made all the time. All types of political maneuverings are made. The argument is that those are bad. Are you arguing they're good? They're bad. And they make bad candidates. What the fuck is going on? There's all types of political maneuverings all over the place, and so why are you complaining?
That is being skewed by not just the media, but by the Democratic Party, who has argued in court that it has a right to rig its own primaries.
Well, rig in what sense?
That's what they argue.
Rig in the sense that I'm going to take a fucking nail, put it into my eye socket, and hammer it in so I give myself a lobotomy to end the pain of this conversation. That's how it's rigged.
In 2016, that they have no obligation to hold a fair contest, that they're allowed to get behind candidates, that they did in fact get behind Hillary Clinton, and that they were under no obligation to do otherwise.
But getting behind Hillary Clinton does not, again, voters still have the opportunity, have the capacity to vote against Hillary Clinton, right? She won the popular vote by 3 million votes in the 2016 primary.
I think we're going around. I don't know that I'm going to
limit to how much. I
don't know that I'm going to be able to persuade you of this. I would just say that I would hope that knowing that Bernie in every single poll was never at any point at any risk of losing to Donald Trump, knowing what a threat Donald Trump was likely to be and has proven to be, I personally would have a lot more irritation for Hillary Clinton for promoting Trump as a Pied Piper candidate, which we learned from the Podesta emails. And I would have a lot of ire for the Democratic Party, who looked at those polls, knew that Hillary Clinton was a risk case, and got behind her at the same time. And I would have a lot of frustration for the liberal media, which pretended like Hillary Clinton was the more electable candidate, than I would for leftists who allegedly don't want power, don't want to wield power.
Well, again, I have no grudge whatsoever against people who voted for Bernie Sanders in the primary. Like, I voted Bernie Sanders in the 2020 primary.
Let's talk about this.
That is what I think progressives should do, to be clear. I think progressives should rally around progressive candidates in primaries.
Okay, and when we feel like that candidate never had a fair shot because the primary was rigged, or we just didn't have a primary at all.
I view this like rigged framing as sort of avoidant.
Okay, but let's talk about 2024. You acknowledged that there was no primary in 2024,
That's right.
and Kamala Harris lost to Donald Trump.
That's right.
And yet you still seem to be placing blame on primary voters in.
That's right. I don't even know what they're talking about. I'm not paying attention.
2024, as opposed to fully placing the blame on Kamala Harris, Joe Biden, and the Democratic Party for running a race without a primary that ignored the will of the constituents.
I do not place. Of course, I'm not placing blame on voters for a 24 primary that effectively did not happen. My blame for the 2024 election is, okay, one, on Biden/Harris for not running a better campaign, Biden for not dropping out earlier, and two, on people not voting for them in the general election, right? Those are the two groups of people who are responsible for that.
Bro, imagine like being imagine like you're talking to a liberal like this, right? All the people that vote for Kamala Harris, they didn't vote for them. Imagine like their face if you're talking to a liberal. Imagine what their face would be if you're like, well, I blame people for not voting for Bernie Sanders in the primary in 2020. So actually, Trump, or in 2016, instead of voting for Clinton, they should have voted for Bernie Sanders, because Bernie Sanders was clearly the more electable candidate. In the polling, he beats Trump, right? In the polling, he beats Trump. I blame the voters for not voting for Bernie, right? Like, what would their face be there? Oh, in 2020, Biden barely won? Bernie Sanders, he had enough vigor to run for 2 terms, so I blame the Democratic voters for not voting for Bernie. Absolutely ridiculous conversation that we're having here. Oh, the voters. It's the voters. My candidate's fucking perfect. Even though there's all of these structural flaws in their candidacy, it's still the voters that are the fault.
Well, and also,
of course, blame.
Oh my God. Two toddlers abducted by their mother in Canada?
And people for not voting for them, even though they never had an opportunity to choose the candidate.
I blame them for not voting for them in the election, in the general presidential election against Donald Trump.
Even though they had no say over who their candidate was going to be in the general election.
Yes. I mean, I think that Kamala Harris was a vice president. She was selected by Biden, who was selected in the 2020 primary.
Undemocratically, that the people had no say in, you know what I mean? The vice president is not somebody that we voted on. They were, on the ticket, obviously, but that is not.
This is how the system works. If we don't like the system, okay, we can talk about maybe how we ought to change it.
Well, that's what I'm doing.
This was a situation that we were presented with in 2024, and people chose not to vote for Kamala Harris, and now we have Donald Trump and all the consequences of that.
Right.
I think the blame for that is widely distributed, but I don't understand why opposition to Kamala Harris has helped this. When the world and the country are just demonstrably much worse as a result of Kamala Harris losing.
Natalie, there's a party that had what was the number again? $1 billion spent in the 107 days of Kamala's presidency, candidacy. There is the DNC is an apparatus with hundreds of millions, billions of dollars, tens of thousands of people on the payroll, think tanks, former presidents, world leaders, all of this at their disposal. They know exactly what the numbers are. They can run polls that Green Party candidates only dream of knowing in terms of having voter information. They have networks of door knocking and voter access and email lists, all the power in the world. And to collapse that power into the power of a few tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of voters scattered across the country or concentrated in certain must-win swing states who were horrified by the fact that Kamala Harris couldn't even distance herself from a genocide where every day you had to open your TikTok and see children without heads and hanging from their limbs and starving to death in Gaza, and to say the blame is widely distributed and not so squarely on the people in power? I think that's what's frustrating. You say the left doesn't want power, the left wants to endlessly critique power. I want to critique those in power who aren't wielding it, whether they're centrist Democrats or they're someone like AOC.
But the consequence of this has been that not only does the genocide continue, right, and avenues towards.
Bruh, just stop there. Just stop there. Oh, we got a different party in charge now, and the consequence has been the genocide continuing. Yeah, you're really proving how big of a mistake it was to all those people that were pleading with Kamala Harris to be anti-genocide. Well, you didn't vote for her, and now the genocide continued. Okay, so just shut the fuck up about this regard. To go back to talking about USAID, go back to talking about ICE, go back to talking about climate change. The thing is, if your line in the sand is genocide, which is a spoiler alert, it's a pretty damn good line in the sand, then you're absolutely 1,000,000% justified in not voting for the genocide candidate. Okay? Trump was anti-war. He of course he was going to completely sell Palestine to Israel, but at least he said he was anti-war. I mean, Kamala Harris just stood by and smiled and waved as the genocide was happening. The consequence of this is that the genocide continued. Okay. You can stop there.
I want to critique those in power who aren't wielding it, whether they're centrist Democrats or they're someone like AOC.
But the consequence of this has been that not only does the genocide continue, right, and avenues towards mitigating the worst effects of it are closed off, and we've also handed Donald Trump access to a nuclear arsenal so that he can go on social media and issue apocalyptic genocidal threats that a whole civilization will die tonight. I don't understand how this improves the situation. It seems to me that it makes it even worse.
Okay, let's break that down. It is not intended to improve the situation, because I, as a voter, don't have the power to improve the situation.
Well, you do have the power to improve the situation.
No, I don't.
Yes.
I have the power to choose one candidate that's pro-genocide or the other candidate that's pro-genocide.
So if you're a single issue Palestine voter,
yes.
If
I am. No, frankly, because I didn't vote for Joe Biden in 2020, obviously. Because if anything, I'm a single issue. Give me health care when the richest country in the history of the world voter. I know it's very uncool to still care about Medicare for all. It's very uncool. That's like a regret, like a chuggy issue from 2016. But I'm sorry,
to blame Palestinians. You should have done. No, she literally already did though. She's like, Palestinians posting themselves getting blown up on Twitter is really bad for. She's like, it's really bad. It's really bad for Jews. It's really bad for Jews for Palestinians to post themselves getting blown up, because it makes people mad, and so they shouldn't do it.
My values and my morals aren't trending like a Twitter topic. I'm deeply invested in them. I'm sorry, I'm getting angry, but not at you. I'm getting angry at the world.
That's fine. That's fine. We're all angry.
And I think, frankly, as a Black person, and having George Floyd in the Black Lives Matter protest having been such a big part of 2020 that got immediately erased because it was supposed to be sublimated in order to get Joe Biden to win. And as someone who sits in a country who has the world's largest prison population, not per capita, but absolutely, and modern day slavery, yeah, I'm mad about a lot of stuff. And for all of those reasons, those are my litmus tests. And I wrote an article in Defensive Litmus Test in 2020 that holds up pretty good. But I also am very glad that the rest of the world seems to have come along to what their bright line is, which is way farther to the right than my bright line. But I'm glad they got there, and it's genocide. I'm glad we can all agree that genocide is a bright line.
The whole country and the whole world agreed upon this. The only people who didn't were Kamala Harris, Joe Biden, the Democratic Party, and of course the Republican Party as well. But the lane is wide open, so wide open that Tucker Carlson's running through it. There's a significant likelihood that Tucker Carlson's going to be the next president of the United States of America because the Democrats have let the anti-war Israel critical lane so wide open that he's sprinting through it, making New York Times reporters look like fools. Did you watch some of that interview?
I did, yeah.
It's hard for me to believe that he just sort of organically reached this place at the end of February. He's like, oh, I think it's a good idea. He did not think it was a good idea. Shutting down a fifth of the world's oil and gas? Of all people, Trump knows that's bad.
You said he's a hostage just now. You told the BBC he's a slave to foreign interests.
Correct.
So I just want to ask you to be sort of explicit. I mean, Trump is being held hostage by whom? Or
by
who,
Benjamin
or by
Netanyahu and by his many advocates in the United States. And we know that not simply because Trump started the war on February 28th, but because he couldn't get out of it. He declares we're having a ceasefire. This was 4 weeks in. He says we're having a ceasefire and we're having these talks and they're going great and we're going to open the strait. And Iran says, yeah, one of our conditions is Israel's got to pull back from southern Lebanon. You can't use the Iran war as a pretext for stealing more land from a sovereign country. That's not your country. Like, no. And it's not just Iran who felt that way. I think the rest of the world's like, what are you doing? I thought we were, fighting the great existential threat, Iran, and now you're taking the opportunity to take Lebanon shore the Litani River and bombing downtown Beirut. Like, what is this? Anyway, this was all very well known. And within hours of announcing this, Trump announcing this, Israel publicly, in a way that was designed to get the attention of everyone, including the Iranians, starts killing civilians in Lebanon. And what was the point of that? Not to secure the Israeli homeland. The point of that was to end any talk of a negotiated settlement, to keep this going until Iran was destroyed and chaotic, which is the Israeli goal. I'm not attacking Israel by saying that. Their goals are different from ours. They're a different country.
Yeah, they would argue, of course, that what they are doing is neutralizing the threat that has been persistent in Lebanon through Hezbollah.
Oh, okay. But I mean, they invaded Lebanon in 1982. Okay, so that was 44 years ago. They've had a lot of experience in Lebanon, a lot. They've had a lot of time to fix Lebanon. They killed Nasrallah. They blew up Hezbollah with explosive pagers. Like, they've done a lot since October 7th in Lebanon. They chose that moment to derail the negotiations. And they've done this repeatedly. And so my perspective as an American is, look, we're the United States. We're a country of 350 million people. You are wholly dependent on us. You're a country of 9 million people with no natural resources. I'm not against you, but like, we're not co-equals here. But the point I'm making is Trump could not restrain Netanyahu. Netanyahu is the one person Trump could not say, hey, settle down, or we'll just defund you and your country will collapse in about 10 minutes, which is true. Israel can't defend itself without the United States, despite whatever propaganda you may have heard. So again, it's not an attack on Israel. It's an attack on American leadership for not constraining its partner in a way that helps the United States. Trump said, I want a negotiated settlement. Israel stopped the settlement. Trump refused to even criticize Netanyahu in public. Are you joking? That's slavery. That is total control of one man by another. And it's, that's between Trump.
He's pulling out the Ben Shapiro line. If we have free healthcare, that is slavery. My wife's a doctor and I do not want her working for free.
And Bibi and God, as far as I'm concerned, but as an American, that's our president, our elected president, whose job is to protect our country and our interests and our economy. And he is looking out for Israel first. That's outrageous. And no amount of like, oh, you're an anti-Semite, which I'm not, and I'm never going to be, is going to stop me from noting that that's outrageous.
He is an anti-Semite.
It is outrageous.
What do you make of it?
Well, the thing is, like, Tucker Carlson I see as the populist moment, but he's a very sinister figure to me, right? Because I feel that he's, this is a person who spent like 10 years ranting about white genocide on Fox News. Like, okay, now he's realized that, like, there's this, there's an audience to be had for being anti-Israel. Mm-hmm. Well, that is savvy in many respects. He's noticed the direction of the wind, but he's going to use it to the worst possible end.
Of course he is.
Yeah. So I guess what I just can't stop coming back to is like, for every like proposed protest vote or for every all the effort spent criticizing Democrats, like, but ultimately to what end? If the end is that Donald Trump is the president or that Tucker Carlson is the president and the country sinks deeper into a fascist nightmare, then I consider this not to have been effective or worth it.
So you, Natalie, and I think you're right, that Tucker Carlson is opportunistic. Look, people are going to get mad at me for saying that. The point is that there is an inconsistency between his interest in Muslim lives and Arab lives now versus then. An inconsistency. to which he's acknowledged and in some ways apologized for. He's apologized for cheerleading the Iraq War. That's neither here nor there, whether you think that's good faith or bad faith. But the point is that there is a change that seems to be following the wind. And the wind is going in a very clear direction, and that nobody wants to support Israel, given what we've seen they're capable of in the last 2.5 years. You have identified that. I've identified that. Tucker Carlson has obviously identified that. Why then won't the Democratic Party do at least as well as Tucker Carlson?
Well, we'll see. I mean, I think that
what are we waiting for? Today's the day. Why are we saying?
Yeah, I mean, there are candidates there are people in the Democratic Party who take a much stronger anti-Israel stance than has ever been normal in American politics until recently. I mean, AOC,
as strong as Tucker's,
for example.
Tucker Carlson is to the left of AOC on Gaza in terms of rhetoric. In terms of rhetoric, I'm not saying
is that being to the left, or is that some kind of like horseshoe populism thing?
What does that mean, horseshoe populism?
So like people on the far left and the far right both agree on hating Israel.
He's on hating Israel. Yeah, like specifically maybe on Israel, just because he's using like the American first thing, and AOC still has some of that American imperialism, but obviously Tucker doesn't mean anything he says. He's just, trying to triangulate and pick up as many of these independent anti-Israel, anti-Semitic people that, I don't know, like of the Nick Fuentes vein.
But like hating Israel for what reasons? I mean,
because it's doing a genocide.
Yes, but is that really what Tucker Carlson is concerned about?
Well, I share your skepticism about what his long game is, but I'll tell you what he says very compassionately at a level that no Democrat has yet described, on a platform bigger than any Democrat has. He has become, it pains me to say this, but it is true, the loudest, most eloquent, most passionate, and articulate critic of Israel and its genocide in the country. And that is a problem for anyone left of center.
Do you not worry that by upholding like Tucker Carlson or Candace Owens, for example, as these exemplars of like anti-Zionist, being anti-Zionist champions, by allowing people on the far right to take that,
and they're not even really anti-Zionist, right? They're just using anti-Semitism as a way to achieve their political goals, which is classic right wing. that's the classic right wing playbook.
By giving them the credit of that rule, don't you worry that this has a potential to kind of blur the leftist claim to anti-Zionism with a right-wing anti-Semitism?
You said it right the first time. First you said allowing, and then you said giving credit for. So let's go back to allowing. I'm not giving credit for anything. I'm ringing the warning bells loud that the Democrats are allowing, which is the word you used the first time, which is correct. They are allowing Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens to be the best anti-Zionist voices and the most high platform anti-Zionist voices in the country. They're allowing it. And yes, I do think that's a problem.
I mean, but shouldn't left-wing anti-Zionists be eager to distance themselves from right-wing figures whose anti-Zionism is very likely to blur into anti-Semitism, right?
It is possible. It's possible.
I feel that is a significant risk.
Yeah, let's talk about that, because you raised that as a concern with Joshua as well. That you anticipate a backlash of genuine anti-Semitism, as opposed to just the anti-Zionism as anti-Semitism against Jews here and in the diaspora, as a consequence of seeing so much carnage that's been inflicted by the Jewish state on the people of Palestine and now the greater region, Lebanon, Iran, etc.
Now I have this other worry, and this is where I've caused myself to become an arch villain of the online left recently, is I also worry that there'll be a backlash to that as well.
A backlash to what?
Well, a backlash to the visible spectacle of Israel's ethnic cleansing, which kind of, I think, has led many people to have an almost obsessive fixation on Israel and Zionism as like the great Satan, right?
It's a great Satan. It's so funny.
Maybe I'm overactive in my anxiety about it, but maybe I'm not. I mean, I think that some people are going to want to retaliate for the hundreds of videos they've seen of children being blown up. That sort of worries me, not just for the victims of the retaliation, but for the continued like escalation of violence that it implies. I don't have an answer. I don't know what to do about it. It's just a thing I'm watching like a train wreck. In the same way that I think on October 7th, when that news came in, of course I was horrified by the attack itself and the victims of the attack, but also was overwhelmed by fear of what Israel was going to do next, which would likely be worse. Is how I felt at the time. And it has been. Yeah.
My problem with doing this show is that the topics that interest me are all of the most thorny topics that the online left gets extremely aggravated by.
Yeah.
So You know, you got some pushback from that, right?
I've noticed.
What do you make of that? What do you think about that pushback?
Well, so my view is not that like, oh, we should all ignore that there's a genocide happening because it might cause people to be anti-Semitic. Of course, that's not what I'm saying. But I do think many people on the left sort of underestimate the risk, or not underestimate, but completely dismiss the possibility that there is some potential issue when it comes to the anti-Semitism and the anti-Zionism getting sort of blurred. And I feel that risk is sharpest when you see alliances being formed with people like Tucker Carlson, where I do not trust Tucker Carlson to maintain a principled anti-Zionism that does not descend into like the most like insidious kinds of anti-Semitic conspiracy theorizing about, you know, Jews controlling the media to corrupt the white race or whatever. Like that is the direction I can see him go.
I mean, I do 100% agree with her that like Tucker Carlson is not supposed to be someone that we should be holding up as like a paragon of anti-Zionist propaganda. He's not the guy. Like he's just a cynically using anti-Semitism as a tool to gain popularity.
Put a lot of stuff in there together. So in his New York Times interview, again, I'm not defending Carlson, but I think that if you are going to critique Tucker Carlson, you have to be very specific because Tucker Carlson is very smart about what he does and does not say. And if you critique Tucker Carlson in a way that is perceived as bad faith, I think we on the left can lose credibility and Tucker Carlson only gains more. So I'm pointing this out as a factual matter because I think we have to be really honest and specific and clear about Tucker to maintain our own credibility. In that New York Times interview, Tucker Carlson, it is insinuated that he's an anti-Semite by the interviewer. He bulks at this. He says, I'm not an anti-Semite. I never have been. I respect Jewish people. I have Jewish friends, you know, whatever you think of that kind of line of argument. And he's very specific to say that I have priorities as an American. I want the interests of Americans to come first. It's very clear that this foreign policy of protecting Netanyahu in Israel does not behoove Americans in the least. I told Donald Trump we should not go to war with Iran. He seemed to have done so reluctantly. And that's a problem. And what you just did there when you said, you know, Jews control the media and it's for the purpose of, you know, whatever, elders of Zion. I mean, you didn't say that, but the New York Times
elders of Zion
that.
type
Elders
stuff.
of Zion.
Elders of Zion type stuff.
You know, Tucker bristled at that.
Concern. Yeah.
Tucker bristled at that. And I got to say, I bristled at that too, because we have to be willing to talk about Zionists controlling the media when they do. When the Ellisons buy TikTok and Nexstar and Paramount and all of these things, and explicitly say they're doing so because they want a Zionist point of view, and they hire Barry Weiss with no qualifications to do Zionist control at CBS. When I'm fired from my media job at The Hill explicitly because I've been fighting for, not explicitly because they never said anything explicitly, but after having fought for 6 months.
Let's see if ContraPoints can traverse the minefield of disentangling anti-Semitism from anti-Zionism, because I don't think it's going to be promising. Let's just say that.
To do any coverage of Israel, despite the fact that the critical Israel coverage was driving our views and making the company money, we have to be able to talk about the way that Zionist media is out of step with popular opinion and, frankly, the truth.
So I think that it is possible. So look, it is possible that I'm wrong, right? It's possible that I'm overreacting to this risk. And it is possible that people like Tucker Carlson will, in fact, be disciplined anti-Zionists who are savvy about not allowing their anti-Zionism to metastasize into some kind of protocols of the Elders of Zion type nonsense. If that's the case, I will look stupid. However, I'm willing to take that risk because I think...
Tucker Carlson is not the example that we want to be citing. Oh my God, I'm fucking dead. Unless I can kill him right now. Can I kill him? A bloodletting for 6. I do 1, 2. My next card is played in extra time. I think I can kill him. I drink this. 3, 4. Oh, let's fucking go. That was sick. What even was that? I feel like I was getting so much attack. That was so sick. She wants to deliberately entangle anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism because it helps her argument that pro-Palestine people are a danger to Jewish people. Well, that's true. She does have that argument that it's like, oh, if you post videos of Palestinians with their legs blown off, that's just going to increase the amount of anti-Semitism that exists. It's pretty fucked up. is for sure it's fucked up. No, I don't. Is Brianna Joy Gray saying that Carlson is in good faith, or
that the odds of
like that's a strange thing to argue.
This metastasizing into some kind of protocols of the
disagree with you there.
are fairly high.
I would be clear. My disagreement is not that there's not risk about where Tucker's going to take this, but that we cannot. If we start saying, oh my God, every time someone talks about Zionist media influence, that's Elder of Zion stuff, well, then the only person who's going to be taken seriously, the only person who's going to talk about the true thing of Zionist media influence is going to be Tucker Carlson. And when he goes and takes it, if he goes and takes it in a genuinely anti-Semitic direction, then everyone's going to go with him. So what I'm saying is we have to be able to talk about, yes, Zionists are buying up the media to shut down people's support of Palestine. This is an explicit discussion that was had by people like Jonathan Greenblatt in the TikTok purchasing battles. Right? This is happening. And if we aren't willing to talk about that happening, then of course the only people who are going to talk about it are people who could weaponize it to bad ends.
I mean, I do. So I accept the criticism that it is important not to overreact as someone coming from my position. In other words, to be cautious about anti-Semitism accusations, because the excessive anti-Semitism accusations to shut down any criticism of Israel has given, I think, many people a fatigue when it comes to even discussing the concept of anti-Semitism at all, right?
Yes,
because they're used to, they've grown accustomed to it being used in this disingenuous way. This is how it's often used in Israeli media to describe any opposition to anything that Israel does whatsoever is characterized as anti-Semitism, right? Yeah, so I think that's a real problem, but the pendulum can, in fact, swing too far the other way. And I feel like I've seen that already happening in certain areas. And I think that I'm unable to suppress my knowledge about who Tucker Carlson is as a person and like the types of agendas that he's tended to attach to. I do not trust him to be a voice for anti-Zionism that does not devolve into some kind of neo-Nazi nonsense.
So I have gotten some flack from my own audience for saying this as well. But I think I share your concerns. But I think the reason you got pushback for that particular clip from the Cinderella interview is because it felt like, and maybe we'll clip it in because I don't want to misquote you, but it came out sort of like, because people are seeing so much carnage out of Gaza, it's going to cause an anti-Semitism flare-up, as though the way to prevent that is to simply not look at or somehow suppress the truth of what Israel is doing in Gaza. Yeah. I know that it's not, but I do think that is part of what was so frustrating, like what part of the backlash was about.
Yeah, well, I think I maybe need to be clearer about what exactly I am saying there, right? Yeah, I mean, I think that people have often. I wrote a very poorly worded like a Reddit post a year ago, which I think a lot of the people have reacted to. I mean, of course, I'm not suggesting that Palestinians should not record what is happening to them and disseminate it, right? Of course, I'm not suggesting that we.
You were kind of suggesting that. Not gonna lie.
Need to suppress the reality of what Israel has done in Gaza in order to prevent anti-Semitism. No, that's not the case at all, right? But I do think that this energy needs an outlet that is constructive, right? Yeah. That is not going to kind of devolve into sort of like, well, an almost a kind of like anti-Semitic inquisition, right? Where like every Jewish person is like demanded to like prove their like.
And who's doing that? Who's doing the anti-Semitic Jewish Inquisition?
Moral, that they are not morally suspect or guilty until proven innocent.
What does that look like? Would it be fair to ask a new acquaintance, hey, I'm going to say I'm on a date, and it comes out that the guy is Jewish. How do you feel about Palestine? Are you a Zionist? Are you an anti-Zionist? Do we think that's kind of an inquisition?
I'm not going to tell you what to say on a date, but I have seen people on social media, for example, like, under any Jewish sounding actor posting like, oh, I hope they're not a Zionist. Are they a Zionist? Blah, 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 blah. And I do feel that this creates this kind of like atmosphere.
Wow, that's so scary. That's crazy. People hope that they're the people that they like aren't Zionists.
Of like a default suspicion of Jews, which sort of is an echo of a centuries long dynamic. I mean, I think that I'm more concerned. I mean, again, this remains sort of a peripheral cultural issue. I guess I'm more concerned about figures like Tucker Carlson and the way that they are going to kind of. I'm worried that the energy, the anti-Israel energy that people have, is like an exploitable energy by some sinister people, right? In the way that, I don't know, like disillusioned like young men on the internet turned out to be a dangerously exploitable energy.
It
right?
is, Natalie, but like, what are we gonna do? Like, this is why I'm so frustrated with the Democratic Party. You and I can't do anything about that, right?
Yeah.
I'm not promoting Tucker. I'm in fact, to the extent that I'm playing Tucker clips, I don't even really retweet Tucker. I won't, but except to say sometimes, gosh, how embarrassing that Democrats aren't saying this. how embarrassing that he's making a stronger statement on this than Bernie or AOC.
But don't you think that's like giving him too much credit?
No,
Like why are you
it's the
accepting
opposite.
Tucker Carlson's framing of himself?
No, because the reason I'm doing this, Natalie, is because that is the truth of what's happening. Whether I say something or I say nothing, the truth is that credibility is being earned on the right and lost among the Democrats. And I can say nothing, and Tucker Carlson is going to be president. like the lane Tucker Carlson is driving through is a 7-lane highway. And it will be a cakewalk because nobody else, including a lot of Republicans, right? He's now like breaking from Trump and the MAGA, are willing to occupy this lane. And so I think it would be a dereliction of our responsibility as people who don't want Tucker Carlson to have that authority and to be leading in this area, to try to get other people who do have the possibility and the platform and the microphone to have similar kinds of authority to take up the mantle. Why isn't AOC, or name someone else, I don't mean to put it all on her, who's this particularly articulate person on the left? Ro Khanna, I don't know.
Yeah.
Why aren't they speaking in the same passionate, moral terms that Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens are speaking in?
Because Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens are like harnessing this this rage for like they're like sinister, like right wing, like borderline like Nazi conspiracist gibberish. Right?
Really, that's not fair. We all share the rage against Israel. You can't have a heart and eyes and not, frankly, detest the state of Israel for committing the worst humanitarian crisis of our lifetime, live stream on TikTok.
But that rage needs to be usefully put to work towards actually achievable political ends, like conditioning aid or denying aid to Israel, or even more aggressively, even sanctioning Israel, right? Like these are things that could actually be achieved.
Right.
Unlike
whatever, yet they were not supported by our Democratic candidates in 2020.
Right, which is a failing. I agree, that is a failing. And I think that is something that will need to shift.
And there's an ongoing debate about whether or not candidates in 2028 will do so. And any candidate that's currently even campaigning with Hassan Piker is getting the Atlantic smear treatment and the New York Times smear treatment. And frankly, there's very little difference between how institutions like the New York Times and the Atlantic are treating Tucker Carlson and how they're treating someone like Hassan Piker, who is an off-ramp for what you're concerned about, who is a left version of the rage against Israel that is fundamentally not anti-Semitic, right? Or do you think that Hassan Piker is
I would certainly rather have Hassan Piker than Tucker Carlson.
But
let's put it that way.
What's your reservation? What's your reservation about Hassan Piker?
I mean, we'll see. I think that again, I mean, I'm frustrated with Hassan for various reasons, some of which are
we've had our differences, but I'm curious what your concerns are.
Well, some of it is related to my frustration with him, that has taken a somewhat similar position to you during the 2024 election. Some of it is more a personal grudge that I have against him. Well, see, I mean, so I appreciate you, for example, actually talking to me, because many of my critics on the left won't talk to me. They just they accuse me of genocide from the comfort of their doggy torture chambers. Sad. Like
now, Natalie, you don't think he actually tortured his dog?
I mean,
from their doggy torture chambers. Oh, I love it. It's so funny. They accuse me of genocide from the comfort of their doggy torture chambers. Oh, he's such a despicable human.
Yeah, this is like petty. This is petty nonsense.
You know he loved that dog. I'm sure he does. With Hassan because I don't think he has enough in my camp. I think that he has been too pro-Democrat and been too much of a sheepdog, ironically.
So we all think that he's a traitor. Well, I'm different. Okay, so now I feel sympathy for Hassan because I empathize with the position of being hated from all directions.
But I can still say, I mean, I don't think it's the left eating itself because I don't try to publicly smear or really criticize him. I speak to our differences. I would love to talk to him. I agree with you. I wish we could all talk to each other. I was very glad when you agreed to come on here, and I've really enjoyed talking to you. I've always liked you and respected your work. And my goal in this was, I would love for you to be persuaded by me in some small way, or at least to, understand the left's position more in a way that maybe gets that meme of yours used a little bit less.
Well, I have no control of this meme, to be clear. Like, this is a throwaway line in a video from 2021 that sometime in 2023, people, I don't know how. I mean, there's no accounting for the way a meme works. So I don't take responsibility for how widespread that meme is. I think that there's a lot of situations where people feel that it applies, and that's why that had the popularity that it does. But this again is not like the central. I don't think this is like central to my message. But I do continue to be frustrated with. I mean, we'll probably continue to clash over as we get to 2028. I mean, we'll see. I'm going into 2028 with a very like neutral attitude towards. I mean, I'm sure I'll support someone or another in the primary, but
who are you liking? Who? I mean, obviously there's a lot of discussion about possible, so we kind of know who the field is going to be.
Yeah, I like AOC. I like Ossoff. I'm willing to tolerate anyone, however. And I know people on the left hate when I say that.
Okay.
But
So now,
it's true.
Natalie,
It's true.
Natalie,
Like I'm openly not taking any. I'm not black. I can't. Yeah. I feel like I'm not in a position to be making demands because I am the hostage. Is how I feel.
You're not the hostage.
Yes, I
You're
am.
the client. You're the client. The Democratic Party is the hostage. I think this is our fundamental
I can't sit here and pretend that I'm just gonna that I'm gonna not vote and let JD Vance win. Because I'm not gonna do that.
It's not pretending if you mean it. Like you have.
I'm never gonna mean it.
But when Chris Hedges talks about the power of the people and the politics of fear, it can't be an empty threat. Like I don't want to not have to vote for a Democrat. Right? Like I would love. When people look at me and they're like, well, you're just doing symbolic politics and you're just expressing your feelings and that's not real. I would love to be the one that gets to sit around and say, Zohran Mamdani's adorable. I'm rooting for him. Kamala Harris seems like a really nice lady and a great chef and her hair always looks fantastic and I'm rooting for her. That would be like, do you know what that would do to my nervous system and my adrenal glands to be able just to sit and like ride the wave and like play my little part at the voting booth and go about my life?
Maybe you should.
Do you think I enjoy getting in fights literally everywhere?
Join us not caring. Oh my God. So fucking off-putting. Not a fan. Not a fan of this person.
There I go. Ruined my friend's birthday party the other day because the conversation about who we support in 2022. I didn't ruin it. This other woman ruined it, but never mind. My presence ruined it because I know my position is a galvanizing one. That being said, I think I am doing the fascism. I am a handmaiden on fascism. If I don't, at very least, in 2026, create some litmus tests that have the possibility of pushing the Democratic Party into a winning direction. When Hassan Piker, I loved when he said to Jennifer Welsh that he wasn't going to vote for Gavin Newsom. Now he says he'll vote for Tom Kritzer, a billionaire whose cousin's in the Epstein files and a bunch of other stuff that I think is silly and I would love to talk to him about at some point. But at very least, I think it is a very responsible position to draw a line in the sand 2 years out from even the primary and say, there are some candidates who are not acceptable and who will not win. And if you want to win Democrats, you have to listen to us. Every other constituency group gets to do that. If I were Elise Slotkin sitting in some Connecticut mansion, the Democratic Party would be salivating over doing more arms sales to Saudi Arabia to get my vote. But let Hassan Piker say, hey, can I have a little healthcare, please? Can we do a little less genocide, please? Can we not have a guy who gets hard off of rounding up homeless people off the streets of Los Angeles, please? He's enemy number one because he's saying, hey, there's lots of people I'll vote for. Gavin Newsom just isn't one of them.
I maybe would have felt this way in 2015. In 2026, I just feel like a hostage. I feel completely demoralized with it. I don't feel like I'm in a position to make any demands whatsoever.
Why is she online doing politics then? You're demoralized from engaging in the political process? Then, holy fuck, I gotta go to bed, guys. Then don't engage in it. What the only thing you've posted is like, oh, we shouldn't be having videos of Palestinians getting blown up because it makes people hate Jews. Like, that's not constructive. Just go away.
I'm just gonna vote blue no matter who. That's just where I'm at.
Okay, then why are you online? You vote. Just if you feel demoralized and you feel like you can't advocate for anything, then don't advocate for anything and shut the fuck up. Just sit in your little ivory tower, and when the election comes around, vote in it. Why don't even care about a primary? Why do you care if there's a primary or not? You're just gonna vote blue no matter who. Just vote. She's just admitting that she's too afraid to look around. It's just like she's like, "Oh, it's the election is scary, so I don't know. I don't know, Brianna. I just don't know." Like, you don't have to. If you're just gonna shut off your brain and vote Democrat, then why are you engaging in this whole conversation? This whole conversation is pointless. She literally said it, and seriously, how are you supposed to have any arguments for that? You're literally just saying that you don't care what the Democrats do, you'll vote for them. Oh, yeah, her and Ethan Klein should start a fucking podcast. Jesus. Alright, guys, there's 30 minutes left. I'm not watching any more of this. Oh, God. Nah. No. The rehabilitation tour is a failure. I'm sorry to say. It's not good rehabilitation. She's not rehabbing her image well. Oh god, fuck this. Alright. Peace out, everyone. It became way too late, so I'll talk to you later, man. I'm fucking depressed. I lost every single Slay the Spire run I tried on here. Alright. But you'd go for 30 more minutes if you're running, and if I didn't die, I'd go for another 30 minutes. Oh. Yeah. Yeah, you think you cracked the code? No, this is quite obvious. I died and ended up going to sleep. Alright, peace out. Everyone have a great rest of their evening. And I'll talk to you all later. Bye.